technology. Thanks, staff. Which is held using interactive conference technology, linking video conference participants and other interested individuals of the public via the Zoom internet conferencing platform. We're doing this, of course, to comply with the ongoing state and county operational directives during the COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the public are able to view the meeting via the Zoom webinar platform. It's especially important now that we are using the Zoom recording to auto-generate transcripts that all meeting participants speak slowly, clearly, and directly into your microphone. Before speaking, it is also very helpful if you state your name and identify yourself for the record. Please be aware that you're being recorded. In the digital record of this Zoom meeting, your continued participation is your implied consent to be part of the public record of the event. If you do not wish to be part of the public record, you should exit the meeting now. As we hopefully now all know, this far into the pandemic, this Zoom conferencing technology allows the parties and each participating commissioner individual remote access to the meeting via our own personal digital devices. Please note that because of that, sometimes due to matters entirely outside of our own control, occasional disruptions to connectivity may occur for one or more members of the meeting at any given time. If this happens, please let us know and please be patient as we try to restore audiovisual signals to continue our business. For any members of the public who are attending this meeting today and wish to testify during portions of the meeting open to public testimony, and you are dialing in by phone, you can press *9 to virtually raise your hand. Otherwise, if you're accessing this meeting via Zoom software, you can use your raise hand function. From time to time, approximately 10 minutes every hour, I will ask for a break. My name is Jonathan Likeke Scheuer, and I currently have the honor and pleasure of serving as the Land Use Commission Chair. We currently have 8 seated commissioners of a possible 9. Along with me, Commissioner Ed Axon, who is excused today.
Yes.
Commissioner Don Chang, Commissioner Arnold Wong, Commissioner Gary Okuda, our LUC executive and our LUC staff, including our executive officer, Dan Oradenker, our chief planner, Scott Derrickson, our staff planner, Riley Hakoda, our chief clerk, Natasha Quinones, and our deputy attorney general for today, Linda Chow, are all on the island of Oahu. Commissioner Nancy Cabral is holding it down on Hawaii Island. Commissioner Lee Ohigashi is on Maui, and Commissioner and Vice Chair Dan Giovanni is on Kauai. Today, as I noted, Commissioner Axon is excused. Our first order of business now is the adoption of the October 27th, 2021 minutes. Ms. Quinones, has there been any written testimony submitted on this matter?
No, Chair, this is Natasha. There has been no written testimony on the minutes.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to testify on the adoption of the minutes? If so, raise your hand. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I have a question.
Commissioner Cabral.
Yeah, I have a question. And this is just, I guess, just for informational purposes. The body of the minutes were acceptable to me, but they referred to our chair for that meeting as acting chair and Giovanni, and was just wondering if that's actually the proper way to call him, because he's our co-chair also. So I wasn't sure if that's the proper procedure or not. I just noticed that. And,
Mr. Oradenker.
He could be referred to either as vice chair or acting chair. It's for the purposes of the minutes. It's not critical.
I think he said for the purposes of the minutes, either acting chair or vice chair is acceptable.
okay, well, they're fine with me. I just had that question. So
Yeah,
thank
no,
you. With all
thanks for
that
that.
good information, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Cabral. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Higashi. Any further discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, raise your hand and say nay. The minutes are approved. Our next agenda item is the tentative meeting schedule. Mr. Ordenker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On November 23rd, we will be once again meeting on the Hōkūao 201H matter. We're anticipating that to be the date for the adoption of the order. On that day, we will also be having a presentation from OPSD with regard to the boundary review. December 8th, we'll be having a hearing on Windward Airport Hotel EIS acceptance. That's also scheduled for December 9th. On December 22nd, we will be hearing, and December 23rd, we will be hearing the Honolulu Hideaway matter. On January 5th, we will be having a presentation from the State Sustainability Coordinator on the 2050 plan. On January 19th, we will be hearing a Kauai IAL matter, which we don't have on the docket yet. And we've also set aside January 20th for the Oahu IAL matter. We anticipate, depending on how things proceed, to have additional hearings on both of those IAL matters in February. And after that, the calendar is open, although I would caution the commissioners that we do have several matters percolating.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there questions about our tentative schedule? If I may, Mr. Ordenker, I noticed that we went from our normal second and fourth Wednesdays and Thursdays to first and third in January and February. Could you share a little more about why we switched?
That was done to accommodate both attorneys' requests and staffing concerns.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay. Seeing none. Our next agenda item is an action item regarding docket number A21-810, PÜLAMA Lanai, to consider the amendment to the agricultural land use district boundaries into the urban land use district for approximately 76 acres of land consisting of a portion of the following tax map keys: 24-9002:061, 24-9-014:001, 249014:009, a portion of those three lots at Lanai City, Island of Lanai, County of Maui, State of Hawaii. Will the parties please identify yourselves for the record?
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Cal Chipchase and Chris Gooden for PÜLAMA Lanai.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Commission. Michael Hopper, Deputy Corporation Counsel, representing Maui County Department of Planning. With me are Deputy Planning Director Jordan Hart, Planner Kurt Wallenhop, and I believe Shane Angawa and Buddy Almeida will be joining from the Departments of Environmental Management and Housing and Human Concerns, respectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Allison Cato, Deputy Attorney General for the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development and Sustainability. And also here are Rodney Funakoshi and Aaron Sadagawa from the Office of Planning and Sustainability.
Has the name changed?
Sorry, Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Okay. We only just changed it. I wouldn't think we would change it again.
It's a bit longer.
Before we continue, let me update the record. On August 19th, 2021, the Commission received a notice of intent to file a district boundary amendment, an affidavit attesting to the publication, and an affidavit attesting to the service of notice from the petitioner. On August 31st, we mailed a pre-hearing meeting notice to the parties. On September 3rd, the State Department of Hawaiian Homelands filed a petition to intervene on this docket. Also on that date, the LUC mailed a pre-hearing meeting notice to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. On September 15th, the LUC mailed and emailed the parties and intervener filing and meeting dates agreed upon in the pre-hearing meeting. On September 20th, the commission received the intervener DHHL's withdrawal of its petition to intervene. On September 30th, the LUC received the County of Maui's position statement and statement exhibits documents numbers 1 through 5. On October 7th, the petitioner filed the following documents: an affidavit of its publication of a notice of intent to file an LUC district boundary amendment petition, exhibits 1 and 2, and a certificate of service, an affidavit of Christopher Gooden attesting to the publication of the notice of hearing and a certificate of service, a notice of hearing on a land use district boundary amendment petition, and a certificate of service. On October 11th, the commission received the petitioner's supplemental certificate of service. On October 18th, we received the petitioner's presentation materials, including a proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law and decision in order, an exhibit list, a witness list, and a certificate of service. On October 20th, the intervener DHHL filed a letter of support sent to the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. On October 20th, also OPSD filed its position statement, witness and exhibit lists, and a certificate of service. Also on that date, the petitioner filed its initial position statement, an affidavit of publication of notice of hearing, and its exhibits 1 through 2, an amended exhibit list, and a petitioner's witness list. On the 21st, the commission received the County of Maui's position statement, documents 1 through 5, and certificate of service. On the 22nd, they filed its witness list and the certificate of service. On the 27th, the commission received OPSD's testimony and support, exhibits 2B, 5 through 12, and a supplemental list of exhibits and a certificate of service. On October 28th, the petitioner filed the following documents: a response to the Department of Planning County of Maui's position statement, an amended affidavit of Kurt Matsumoto attesting to the meeting with community groups, a petitioner's response to the OPSD position statement. On November 2nd, the LUC mailed out the meeting agenda for our November 10th, our November 10th, 2020 meetings to the parties and to our statewide and Maui County mailing lists. And on November 8th, OPSD filed in Exhibit 7B, a second amended list and a certificate of service. With all of that said, I will now briefly go over our procedures today. I will first recognize any written testimony that's been filed. I will then call for any individuals who are attending this meeting who wish to provide public testimony on this matter. If there are any individuals, they should use the raise their hand function to raise your hand. I will admit you one by one as panelists, swear you in, give you an opportunity to speak. After you have an opportunity to provide testimony, you need to remain available for questioning by the parties and the commissioners. Following any testimony, we will then consider all of the exhibits the parties wish to offer into evidence, starting with the petitioner, followed by the county, and then OPSD. After admitting all of those exhibits, we will then hear the petitioner's presentation, followed by any questions and comments from the commissioners, then from the County of Maui and the same, and finally OPSD and the same. The petitioner will be given an opportunity at the end for any rebuttal that they may have. And as I stated before, we will try to take a break approximately 10 minutes every hour. Parties, are there any questions on our procedures for today? And then I will recognize Commissioner Okuda. Parties, questions on our procedures? Mr. Chip Chase?
Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Hopper?
No questions, Chair.
Ms. Kato?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Okuda?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a disclosure. This disclosure will be more than just a couple sentences, but I think it's necessary to get it on the record. Let me preface my disclosure by saying that if anyone, parties or commissioners believe that I should recuse myself in this case, I will recuse myself, and it really doesn't create a problem. Let me preface what I'm saying first by, on the matters that are taking place today in this docket, and also the matters that I'm going to disclose on the record, I do not have any financial interest in any of the matters. And with respect to the matters that I am disclosing also, and also this docket, I am not engaged as legal counsel, advisor, consultant, representative, or in any other agency capacity, as all those terms are used in HRS 84-14 dealing with conflicts of interest. So let me make my disclosure. For about, and it might be over 10 years, I have worked with my childhood friend, Wilbert, W-I-L-B-E-R-T, Holk, H-O-L-C-K Jr., who now is the executive director of the Hawaii State Teachers Association, HSTA, the Teachers Union. During this time, we have worked on attempts to promote teacher housing in various forms. Frankly speaking, none of it has really come to any type of fruition. During the pandemic, I have hosted Zoom meetings, which have included not only Mr. Holk, but also several teachers and educators on the county, from the county of Maui, and also specifically from Lanai, where certain types of educational initiatives and possibilities were discussed. During one of these Zoom meetings, someone made a mention of speaking with Kurt Matsumoto, who is, my understanding, the head of PÖLAMA Lanai. I've never met Mr. Matsumoto. If I saw him on the street, I probably would not recognize him because I really don't know what he looks like. And I'm pretty sure he has never met me, or if he has, we haven't made any type of connection. And during one of these Zoom meetings, one of the educators made mention of the fact that recruitment of teachers is made difficult because of a housing issue. And someone also made mention that they might have spoken with Mr. Kurt Matsumoto about potential housing matters. Let me finally say, I was frankly surprised to see one of the housing conditions stated as a condition in this matter, but because of my involvement with the HSTA, which I have never received, and my firm have never received any payment, this is simply community service. I believe this disclosure needs to be made. I promise you that unless someone objects to my continued presence, if I continue to be part of this docket, I will strictly follow the evidence and the rule of law here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that extensive disclosure, Commissioner Okuda. I'm going to ask all of the parties whether or not there's any objection to Commissioner Okuda's continued participation in this matter, starting with the petitioner.
No objection, Chair.
Mr. Hopper,
No objection.
OPSD.
No objection. Thank you.
Okay. And Commissioner Chang, I'm going to acknowledge you, but I actually have my own disclosure to make, which I'd rather give the parties the opportunity to reject me and have somebody else handle the other objections in case there is. I just want to recognize for the record that the Department of Homelands is a client and a long-term client of mine. I had no discussions with them regarding their proposed intervention in this docket, and read about it only, or learned about it essentially after the fact, after they had apparently come to some agreement with PÖLAMA Lanai and withdrawn their petition to intervene. So had they intervened, I would not be able to continue on this docket. However, they're not an intervener. I do not have any conflict, I believe, financial or otherwise, that arises. Nonetheless, I want to disclose that matter for the record and give the parties the opportunity to object to my participation. And to be clear, if one or more of the parties object to my participation, then I would actually hand over the deliberation over my objection to Vice Chair Giovanni. Not Commissioner Chip Chase, Mr. Chip Chase.
I appreciate being elevated, Chair. My vote is in favor of the petition. Given the withdrawal of the petition, or the petition intervene and DHHL support, I don't believe it would be appropriate for you to recuse yourself, and we have no objection to your continued participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chip Chase. And I'll just note, not all people would view being on the commission as elevation, but thank you for giving us that. Mr. Hopper.
No objection, Chair.
Ms. Kato.
No objection, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chang, you have a disclosure?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I too would like to disclose that, I think at least 5 to 10 years ago, I did have a small contract with PÖLAMA Lanai to assist them on some burial issues related to Lanai Cemetery. I no longer have a contract with PÖLAMA Lanai, and I do not believe my previous work with PÖLAMA Lanai will affect my ability to be fair and objective in deciding this matter. But I too leave that up to, if any of the parties have an objection, I will leave it up to them to note that objection. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chang. Once again, any objections to Commissioner Chang's continued participation in this matter? Mr. Chip Chase.
And no, Chair, no objection.
Mr. Hopper.
Chair.
Ms. Kato.
No objection.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you.
I'll note for the record, and this is just coincidence, it is 5 years to the day that I started work as a hearings officer for the LUC on a previous Lanai matter. With all of that said, Ms. Quinones, is there any written testimony that's been received on this matter?
Hello, Chair. Yes, this is Natasha. We had 4 written testimonies received. One from Scott Ashworth, Director of Gulf 4 Seasons Resorts Lanai. Alistair McAlpine, this General Manager of the 4 Seasons Resorts Lanai. A resident, Melania Cavilas, and Alice Brenito. And that's it.
And those have all been posted to the website.
They all have been posted to the website.
Great. Thank you. Now, I'm going to ask if there's any members of the public who wish to testify in this matter. If so, please raise your hand using the raise your hand function. Great, I see a number of people. Keep your hand raised one by one. I will let you in the order stated. I don't see anybody calling in by phone, so it's using the software for the raise your hand function. Okay, we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members of the public. I'm going to admit Mr. Ben Sheets, followed by Ms. Linda Okamoto. When, oh, sorry, Mr. Sheets, okay. Please keep your hands raised if you want to do it. And so the way this works is that when you are admitted to be a panelist, you will now have the ability to turn on your camera and turn on your audio. So please do so when you come into the meeting. I can see you now. And can you say something as a test?
Yep. Hello, test.
Great. Okay. I'm now going to swear you in. And after I swear you in, if you would state your name and address for the record and then proceed with your testimony. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. So name and address for the record and then proceed.
Yeah. My name is Ben Sheets. I reside at 735 Fraser Avenue, Lanai City, Hawaii. My name is Ben Sheets. I am the pastor at Lanai Union Church and new resident to the island and new resident to Hawaii. As I come and speak on behalf of many in our congregation, as people of deep faith and conviction, our roots are in hospitality, welcoming the stranger and providing shelter for the vulnerable. We believe that shelter and affordable housing are more than simple commodities. A secure home is the foundation for people to build their lives and thrive. And so we are in support, many of us, of this project. Here on Lanai, we have not seen new or affordable housing for working families in some time. And this leaves many households doubling up with extended family as they wait for rental units to become available. It's especially noticeable for workers who come to Lanai for employment to strengthen their family and become a part of our community. And while these arrangements are manageable for times of transition, they are not sustainable for households who intend to stay and be a part of creating community in this place. And so we would welcome additional affordable housing here on Lanai so that our community can continue to invest in itself and to have a space where we can truly thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Sheets, I'm asking all witnesses need to stay available for any questions from the parties or the commissioners. Mr. Chipchase,
No questions, Pastor Sheets. Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Hopper,
Questions?
Ms. Cotto,
No questions, thank you.
commissioners. Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today. I will now move you back to being an attendee. And I will admit Linda Okamoto, followed by Elton Kinoshita. Ms. Okamoto, if you will enable your camera and audio.
Okay, I have my audio,
Yeah, we can hear you.
but I
Good.
don't seem to know how to do the camera.
The camera should be, the icon should be at the bottom of your screen if you move your mouse towards the bottom of your screen.
Okay, let's see, camera. Share screen?
No.
No, start video. Okay, got it, I think.
There we go. Well
Did that
done.
work? Okay.
Yes, and your reward will be swearing in. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth.
I do.
Okay, name and address for the record, and then please proceed.
Linda K. Okamoto. My address is 539 Kualua, Lanai City, Hawaii.
Okay, please proceed with your testimony.
I have lived on Lanai for over 50 years. I started as a school teacher here, and housing was really bad then, as it is today. I have no connection to PÖLAMA in any way. I am a realtor, have my own office. I do handle some rentals, and I know how frustrating it is for young people, especially, to move out of the parents' home and find a place. Almost every day have phone calls wanting rentals, and we have none. We just can't handle the amount of people who are looking for a rental housing. As I said, I've been here for 50 years. Every time there's been a new subdivision, there's always the question, well, do we really need it? And it immediately fills up. We've had only 2-3 subdivisions added in the times that I've lived here on Lanai. And I came and I lived in teacher housing to start with. When I got married, it was very difficult because at that time, only dole workers could get housing outside of teacher housing. So we were lucky to be able to stay in teacher housing for a while until we bought our own home. But I can see the frustration of people who are moving here. Families are living in 1-bedroom apartments with maybe 10 people. That's just not healthy. As a former school teacher, I know how difficult it is for children who are having to share their very small apartments, their very small houses with a large family, or usually more than one family. And so I really feel this is such an important project. There may be small issues that some people disagree with, but the important thing is we have to have additional housing. Going from agriculture to urban, this particular part of the land that they want to build on is not really ag land. It's been zoned that way, but in all the years I've lived here, I don't recall it being used very much for agriculture. Our town is so compact now, there's no other place to build except to expand the city. So I urge you strongly to please approve this petition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for the witness? Mr. Chipchase,
No questions. Ms. Okamoto, thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Hopper,
No questions, Chair.
Ms. Cotto,
No questions, thank you.
commissioners. Any questions? I have a lot of questions about what you might have seen over 50 years on Lanai, but none of them are relevant to what we're
Okay.
discussing today. Thank you very, very much for your testimony. We very much
Thank you.
appreciate it. I'm going to move you back to being an attendee.
Okay, thank you.
And I will admit Elton Kinoshita, followed by Roger Alcancel. Aloha,
Can you hear
good morning. We can hear and see you.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioners and
Do you
Chair.
swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. So name and address for the record, then proceed.
Okay, Elton Kinoshita. My address is 3842 Claudine Street in Honolulu. This June, I retired from the Hawaii Department of Education. Prior to retiring, I served for 8 years as a principal of Lanai High and Elementary School. I am speaking today in support of the Hōkūao project and the rezoning of agricultural land for urban use. I have since moved back to Oahu and do not have any affiliations with PÖLAMA Lanai. As principal of Lanai High and Elementary School, recruiting qualified teachers was always one of the greatest challenges. Coupled with the difficulty of convincing candidates to come to Lanai to teach was the challenge of providing housing for interested teachers. In the past 2 school years, although we still had unfilled teaching positions, I stopped my recruiting efforts because there were no available rental units to offer any teacher that was interested in moving to Lanai to teach. These open teaching positions forced us to ask substitute teachers to commit to teaching classes for the entire school year, and this in turn severely reduced our substitute pool to cover day-to-day short-term teacher absences. Currently, about 20% of Lanai's teachers are housed in DOE-owned teacher cottages. I would surmise that another 20% of the faculty own their own homes. The remaining 60% of the faculty reside in rental units. The primary housing provider, PÖLAMA Lanai, has generously supported the school's efforts to provide rental units. However, they have to balance the housing needs of other entities as well. Given the fact that the island of Lanai comprises 140 square miles of land and the island supports about 3,000 residents, I believe the benefits of rezoning some of the unused ag land to build this project far outweigh the loss of good croplands. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And that was spot on, right on 2 minutes. I appreciate it. Questions for the witness, Mr. Chip Chase?
No, Chair. Mr. Kinoshita, thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Hopper?
No questions, Chair, sorry.
Ms. Kato?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioners, beginning with Commissioner Gary Okuda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kinoshita, I just wanted to say that you put a face on the name that I heard in my various Zoom meetings. You probably already know this, but if you don't, you're held in very high esteem by your teachers at Lanai High and Elementary School. And I dare say even the union people hold you in high esteem, and which is a very interesting combination of things. So thank you for your service to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Okuda. Further questions for Mr. Kinoshita? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony and for taking the time today. We very much appreciate it. I'm going to move you to be an attendee. I'm going to admit Roger Alconcel, followed by Kathy Carroll. So if you can, oh, great, awesome. Good morning.
Okay, hi, good morning. Alconcel. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Roger Alconcel, born and raised on Lanai. I graduated back in 1990. Then born and raised here, moved to the mainland and outer islands work. But I always wanted to come back home and to help the community. So while I was in the mainland, I called back to see if I can come back home, because at that time I had a 1-year-old daughter, and I wanted, there's no place to raise a daughter on the island of Lanai, especially living in the mainland. So I lived in Montana for a while, and the only way for me to get a job at Lanai, which I knew was the problem would be housing. So what I did was I had a great job in Montana. I just quit my job, moved to Lanai. I have a family home on Lanai, so I'm fortunate. So I had a place to live. But I knew that if I send my resume, application, it wouldn't really do anything because everybody knows Lanai, there's no job, there's no place to live. So what I did was I quit my job. So I lived in Lanai, worked as a casual. Sometimes I did substitute teaching, casual security, casual, what have you. But I did have a lot of skills that I could offer the community, but that's the only way what you have to do. And eventually I got a job with Four Seasons, and now I work for PÖLAMA Lanai. I manage the store here in Lanai, and I'm giving my part back to the community. I left a well-paying job in Montana just to come back to serve the community. I probably could live a better life on the mainland because price is cheaper, house is cheaper, but I chose to move back to Lanai, and I know there's a lot of friends and colleagues of mine that want to move back to Lanai just to raise their family and help the community. But, unfortunately, they don't have a place to stay. I do, so I was able to do that. But many of us, my classmates, want to move back and help and provide supporting community service, but they don't have a place. So I support this project. I hope you can approve this so many of my colleagues and friends can return back home and help the community.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions for the witness, Mr. Chip Chase.
No questions, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Alcancel, for your very personal testimony.
Mr. Hopper.
No, Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Kato.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioners. Thank you very much for your testimony and for sharing your personal journey and how this project might impact it. We appreciate it. I'm going to move you back to being an attendee. And then I'm going to admit Kathy Carroll, followed by Noemi Barbadillo. Kathy Carroll. Great. We can see you. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Kathy Carroll. I reside at 758 Queen Street in Lanai City. My husband and I have lived here almost 21 years, and we've owned and operated the Mike Carroll Gallery for almost 19 years. I'm coming at this from the perspective as a small business owner, and we urge the State Land Use Commission to approve the petition for the rezoning. The Hōkūao project is so sorely needed here, and it really helps solve the most dire situation in workforce housing that you've already heard. In our own small business, we have an employee at the moment who is desperately seeking a rental. And as Ms. Okamoto said, there's nothing available. Thank goodness his partner has a job with Four Seasons, and they're temporarily able to live at the hotel. And even though it's a luxury hotel, a hotel is not a home. They can't cook there. There's, you need decent housing. There's so many more stories like this on Lanai that you would hear over and over again. But this terrible situation can be helped. PÖLAMA Lanai is standing poised, they're ready, willing, and able to create beautiful, decent housing. And we also understand that the affordable units within the development will remain affordable in perpetuity. And I think that's a very rare and wonderful opportunity. So in our view, the time has come. This has gone on long enough. Lanai has waited forever for decent, affordable housing. So we urge you to approve the petition without delay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carroll. Questions for our witness, Mr. Chip Chase?
No question, Chair. Ms. Carroll, thank you for your support.
Mr. Hopper,
Questions, Chair.
Ms. Cotto,
No questions, thank you.
commissioners. It's valuable to have additional perspective of somebody trying to retain employees. Thank you very much. And I will admit, I have been in your gallery many times and never purchased anything. So but it is very beautiful.
We have to fix that. Thank you.
You'll need to raise our LUC salaries from 0 to something. So
Well, thank you for visiting anyway. We do
thank
have
you very much.
magnets.
Okay. I'm going to move you to be an attendee. I'm going to now admit Noemi Barbadillo, and then followed by Ms. Barbadillo, we have Diane Preza and Anela Sanchez, which is the conclusion of everybody who has their hands raised. If anybody still wishes to testify, you should raise your hand. I've admitted Ms. Barbadillo. Good morning, aloha.
Good morning.
I'm going to swear you in and then ask you to say your name so that I can pronounce it correctly the next time and give your address. So do you swear from the testimony you're about to give us the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Noemi Barbadillo. I reside at 522 Kualua Place, Lanai City, Hawaii. Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to give our testimony. I grew up in Lanai and left Lanai for about 12 years. I've been back now for about 8 years, and since I've returned, I've seen and experienced the lack of housing as well as the lack of desired housing. Hōkūao will not only increase availability of housing, but it will also give people a choice of the type of housing instead of just being assigned or having to accept housing because that's all there is. Like Mrs. Okamoto, we get numerous calls daily on availability for housing. It's hard when we know it's a domestic issue and we can't help the person because we have no housing. So, with Hōkūao coming on board, it will give us the increase in availability of housing. It'll also give people a choice of the type of housing that they want to have. So please allow the development of Hōkūao by approving our request to rezone part of the project area from agricultural to urban. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for the witness, Mr. Chip Chase.
Thank you, Ms. Barbadillo. I appreciate your testimony. No questions, Chair.
Mr. Hopper,
No questions, Chair.
Ms. Cotto,
No questions, thank you.
commissioners. Ms. Barbadillo, for the record, you stated your residency on the island and you're being born and raised there. Do you have an affiliation with PÖLAMA Lanai?
Yes, I work for PÖLAMA Lanai as Director of Commercial and Residential Properties.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions for Ms. Barbadillo? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today. We very much appreciate it. Actually, you know what? I have another question. Because some of the previous witnesses have talked about the needs for priority groups, such as residents returning home, or you've mentioned references to people who are in what I gathered to be domestic violence situations, and like you need to get out of the house, but if there's no place to go, where you go? Is there, in the record of this docket that you're aware of, or in your procedures, a plan for making sure there's units available for those groups, or can you otherwise explain how available units will be allocated?
As far as I know, we're going to follow our procedure now. I mean, for affordable, I think it's whatever the affordable process will be, but for PÖLAMA, the market homes that we have are going to be assigned the way we're assigning it now, workforce first, and then everyone that, everyone else.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, commissioners? If not, thank you very much for your testimony. We very much appreciate it. I'm going to move you to be an attendee, Diane Preza, followed by Anela Sanchez. And there are anybody else who wishes to testify should raise your hand using the raise your hand function now. Otherwise, I will close the witness list. We will go to approximately 9:50 and then take a break and then proceed with admission of exhibits. So Diane Preza, I'm promoting you to be a panelist. Aloha and good morning.
Hi, aloha.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the truth?
I do.
Okay, please proceed.
So thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Diane Preza and I am testifying on behalf of myself. I was born and raised on Lanai and I support the Hōkūao housing project and the rezoning of ag land to urban use. So I work for PÖLAMA Lanai and was involved in sharing facts about Hōkūao with the community. I interacted with many residents, mainly in small groups. I met with folks at the model home, and in every instance, they were amazed at the beauty of the house and the yard. My job was to inform residents about Hōkūao, asking them to please share what they learned with family and friends. They could then make up their own mind as to what they thought of the project. The majority of folks I spoke with supported it as they recognized the need for more housing on island. Through the process, I learned that residents want more housing to alleviate crowded living situations. Lanai residents living in multi-generational households do not always do so by choice, but out of necessity due to the lack of housing. And residents want more housing options. It got me thinking about when my husband and I first moved home in the 80s. We were fortunate enough to get housing quite easily and were able to raise our family here where we both grew up. So I'm telling you this because I wish the same experience for others on Lanai. I wish that they can experience life independently in their own home. I wish that their children can have a yard to play in. I wish that they can relax in a comfortable home after a long day of work. So it's not so much that Hōkūao has all the fancy bells and whistles, but that Hōkūao will offer the chance to relieve stress in people's lives. In our tight-knit community, we try to lift each other up because we care about each other. When one hurts, we all hurt. And we also celebrate the good things and we stick together. So for the sake of our community, please support rezoning and the Hōkūao housing project. Mahalo for your time.
Thank you very much. Questions for the witness? Mr. Chipchase?
No questions, Chair. Ms. Preza, thank you for your support.
Mr. Hopper?
No questions, Chair.
Ms. Kato?
No questions, Chair.
Commissioners? Thank you very much for your testimony today.
You're welcome.
I will move you to be an attendee again. And I will admit, Anela Sanchez, I note there is now one call-in number. So if the call-in person wishes to testify on this matter, you should press *9 on your keypad to raise your hand. Anybody who is wishing to testify on this matter, who is accessing this via Zoom software, uses raise your hand function. If I do not see any more hands after this witness, I will close testimony on this matter. Ms. Sanchez. Aloha.
Hello.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Okay. So if you'd state your name and address for the record and then proceed.
Anela Sanchez, 254 Ko'olu'ula Place, Lanai City, Hawaii.
Please proceed.
So aloha, my name is Anela Sanchez, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity to testify. And I would like to show support for the Hōkūao project and urging the approval of rezoning of agricultural land. I spent part of my childhood here, and when I graduated and left for college, I always knew I wanted to come back and give back to the Lanai community. Last July, I was fortunate enough and received a job where I could come home. My son, husband, and I planned to move home, but I never realized how scarce the housing situation was here until we started looking. There was little to nothing available, and what was available was way out of our price range. We ended up moving in with my in-laws and currently all live in a bedroom in their house. We're lucky enough to have my in-laws to let us live with them. And I know many other families are living the same way, many of who have 8 to 10 people in a one house, which also only has one bathroom. And when I did live here before, I was part of that 8 to 10 people with only one bathroom, and that was very difficult. I also know many people I went to school with or just other past residents of the younger generation wanting to move home like I did. But because of the housing shortage we have here, they can't. So for me, I really hope this petition gets passed because one, this project is not only offering affordable rentals in perpetuity, which is huge, but the bigger reason is that this project is offering more inventory for us, which is exactly what we need right now. So for this reason, I support and urge the approval of this petition, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sanchez, for the clarity and brevity of your testimony. Questions for the witness, Mr. Chip Chase?
No questions, Chair. Ms. Sanchez, thank you for your time and for your testimony.
Mr. Hopper?
No questions, Chair.
Ms. Kato?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioners? No, thank you very much for sharing the personal level of impacts of housing. I'm going to move you to be an attendee. No one else has raised their hand to testify on this matter. I'm going to close public testimony on this hearing. And it is currently 9:52 a.m. I'm going to call for a 10-minute recess till 10:02 a.m., at which time we will admit exhibits and then hear from the petitioner. 10-minute recess.
I'm lost now.
Thank you. We are back from a second unintended and extended recess. We're now going to move on to admission of exhibits from the parties. Mr. Chip Chase, please describe the exhibits you wish to have admitted to the record.
Yes, Chair. We have 15 exhibits that have been submitted both in the original and the amended witness list. They include Exhibit 1, map of petition area. Exhibit 2, our final environmental assessment and finding of no significant impact. That has 2 parts. Or 3 parts, sorry, Chair. The 201H housing project application, the County Council resolution approving the application is Exhibit 4. Exhibit 5, our tax map showing the petition area. Exhibit 6 is the land ownership documentation. 7 is the affidavit, an amended affidavit complying with the publication and service rules. Exhibit 8 are our proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision in order. 9 is the affidavit of PÖLAMA complying with certain HAR provisions. Exhibit 10 is the DHHC certification that the project meets 201H requirements. Exhibit 11 is a survey of the petition area. Exhibit 12 is the Lanai community plan. Exhibit 13 is the letter from the State Historic Preservation Division accepting our 6E compliance documents. Exhibit 14 is the countywide policy plan, and Exhibit 15 is written testimony. And I would ask that the commission receive all 15 exhibits into evidence.
Thank you. Are there any objections from the party, starting with the county?
Objections, Chair.
Office of Planning and Sustainable Development?
No objections.
Commissioners, any questions or objections? Seeing none, petitioners' exhibits 1 through 15 are admitted into the record. Mr. Hopper.
Chair, we didn't have a separate exhibit list. We did have several documents attached to the county's position statement for your information. I guess out of caution, I would ask that the 5 documents be admitted into evidence along with the position statement, which was also filed. I can't identify them by name, but they were each attached to the position statement and reference. So I would just ask that those are admitted along with the position statement for the commission's consideration.
Okay, so we'll number them 1 through 5 if they're admitted, the 5 attachments along with the position statement. Any objections to the admission of the exhibits from the county, starting with the petitioner?
Chair, all 5 were received as part of the county's position statement, and we have no objection to them.
Okay. Ms. Kato,
No objections.
commissioners. Seeing none, County of Maui's position statement and their 5 attachments are admitted into the record. Ms. Kato.
Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has 14 exhibits, numbered 1 through 12, and there's a 2B and a 7B. I'm not sure if you want me to read them, but we'd like all of these exhibits accepted into the record.
Do you think there's any lack of clarity on what they are that you need to read them?
I do not.
Any objections to the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development's exhibit list? Mr. Chip Chase.
Chair, we've had an opportunity to review the amended exhibit list with 14 exhibits, and we have no objection to them.
Okay. Mr. Hopper.
No objections, Chair.
Commissioners, questions or objections? Hearing none, the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development's exhibits as referenced by Ms. Kato are admitted into the record. We will now move on to the petitioner's presentation. Mr. Chip Chase, how many witnesses do you intend to call today? And can you give us a general outline of your presentation?
Of course, Chair. I have 2 witnesses that I will call, Dr. Dansel and Mr. Matsumoto. We have additional witnesses, the substantive experts who prepared the studies and reports that are included in the exhibits that were now admitted to the commission. I don't anticipate calling them unless the commission has questions that are best addressed by them or has specific questions regarding their reports. The general outline of my presentation will be first testimony by Dr. Dansel, then testimony by Mr. Matsumoto, and then if requested by the commission or a need based on the commission's questions to either witness, I'll call the appropriate substantive expert.
Okay, and do you have a sense of how long you intend to spend with each of these witnesses?
Yes, Chair. Subject to the commission's questions, of course. I believe that both Dr. Dansel and Mr. Matsumoto can wrap up in collectively 40 to 45 minutes.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm going to, if Dr. Dansel, if you will raise your hand in the.
Dr. Dansel will join me. We're getting as close to being back to in-person testimony as we can, Chair.
Okay.
So she will take her seat in a moment.
Okay, she is there with you physically.
Yes, Chair.
What a concept. Okay. Sorry, actually, if you would not screen share until after I've sworn her in, please. Just so it's easier for me to. Good morning. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Great, thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Chip Chase.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll do so first by providing just a little bit of context. As the commission knows.
Commissioner Giovanni?
Thanks, Chair. I need to make a disclosure. Ms. Dansel and I were former colleagues at Hawaiian Electric, worked together for several years. I see absolutely no conflict in my ability to be fair in my judgment of this docket. Just wanted to disclose that.
Okay, I will pause then and just see if there's any objections to Commissioner Giovanni's continued participation in these proceedings. Mr. Chip Chase?
No objection, Chair.
Mr. Hopper?
No objection, Chair.
Ms. Kato?
No objection.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the disclosure, Commissioner Giovanni. Mr. Chip Chase, please continue.
Very good. So commissioners, as you know, we're here for the consideration of the Hōkūao Affordable Housing Project, a District Boundary Amendment or Petition or DBA. Granting this DBA will allow the construction for the first time in nearly 30 years of affordable housing for the people who live and work on Lanai. And you heard from the public testimony today how sorely needed that housing is. This redesignation, or this petition, asks for the redesignation of approximately 56.5 acres of land from what is currently in the state agricultural district to the state urban district. And on that note, one small item of housekeeping: the agenda that was circulated and that the chair read today includes one error. It references TMK ending in 009. That's actually not part of the petition area. We brought that mistake or that error to the attention of staff, who just asked me to make the correction on the record today. And so I'm doing so. Otherwise, the agenda and the materials that were circulated and that have been read by the chair are correct. And as we proceed with our testimony, our presentation today, we will discuss the details of the project, including the designs and plans for the affordable housing project. We'll talk about the process that PÖLAMA Lanai has gone through to get to where we are today. In our typical experience, we're a little backwards. Normally we come to the commission first for the redistricting and then turn to the county for the rezoning. This time in a 201H project, the Council of Maui has already approved the project, and we come to the LUC last for redistricting, and we'll talk about that. As I mentioned to the chair earlier, we have two witnesses from PÖLAMA Lanai today, Dr. Keikipua Dancel, who is seated next to me, and the president of the company, Mr. Kurt Matsumoto. As I said, all reports and technical studies are now on file with the commission and received into evidence. And in addition, many of the experts who assisted with this project and in the preparation of those studies and the reports are available to answer the commission's questions. With that introduction, Chair, I'd like to ask Dr. Dancel, who's seated next to me, to introduce herself.
Aloha, Chair Scheuer and Vice Chair Giovanni and members of the commission. My name is Keikipua Dancel. I'm the Senior Vice President of PÖLAMA Lanai, serving as Government Affairs and Strategic Planning.
And Dr. Dancel, would you please briefly describe your responsibilities at PÖLAMA Lanai?
My responsibilities include the overall project management, strategic planning, and execution of permitting and entitlements. I also direct the efforts of the community development team, which engages directly with the Lanai community. In addition, I work closely in collaboration with the Senior Vice President of Development and Construction. Together, we align our activities to achieve the strategic development goals for PÖLAMA Lanai, ensuring a unified process.
Thank you, Dr. Dancel. And would you please briefly describe for us your educational history and your work experience?
I have a PhD in chemistry from the University of California, San Diego, and an MBA from Harvard Business School. The research, problem solving, and analytical nature of my educational background provides me a foundation and framework to strategically analyze a variety of issues that may arise during the design, planning, and development of any project. I have over a decade of experience in business development and strategy. As Vice Chair Giovanni mentioned, most recently I served as Director of Strategic Initiatives at Hawaiian Electric.
And would you describe for us your work in connection with the Hōkūao Affordable Housing Project?
My work and my involvement has been quite extensive since joining PÖLAMA Lanai 2 years ago. Overall, project management and the entitlement and permitting process for the county application and proceedings before the LUC today. This involved strategic planning, coordinating and reviewing studies and iterations of the project with technical consultants, agencies, and design experts.
And would you help us orient ourselves to the project location near Lanai City?
Sure. If you look first off onto the left, Hōkūao is located in the middle of the island. Blow up of that section is depicted on the right. As you can see, it's 76 acres. It's very close to the proximity of Lanai City, the other residential areas. Dole Park is shown here in green dash box. Lanai High and Elementary School is in the dashed white circle. Fraser Avenue is the bold yellow line. This is the main road to access both 9th and 12th Street in orange. This is the ingress and egress streets to Hōkūao. Nearby undeveloped parcels include the yellow outline, the County of Maui's affordable housing parcel, which is approximately 115 acres. And to the north, outlined in blue, is 33 acres for DHHL future residential expansion. To the south, circled in purple, is the county's wastewater reclamation facility.
And Dr. Dancel, would it be correct that the project area is 76 acres, but the request for redistricting is 56.5.
That is correct. Some of the area is already designated as urban district.
Thank you very much. Let's build on some of the discussion that the public testifiers had today, and that is the need for housing on Lanai, beginning with affordable housing. Dr. Dancel, does Lanai need affordable housing right now?
I think you heard from many people today. It absolutely does. On Lanai, the challenge is lack of inventory. That was said repeatedly. There is a housing shortage. This has led to families living in overcrowded situations. Last affordable residential housing development was nearly 3 decades ago. Currently, there are no affordable housing options for those with an AMI of 60% and above. The 39 units at Eviola expired in June, as depicted in the chart here on the left. As part of our application, we agreed to make those 39 units affordable in perpetuity and expand their availability to incomes up to 80% AMI. The 76 affordable units at Hōkūao will be available to AMI levels ranging from more than 80% up to 130%, and again in perpetuity. Hōkūao will increase the number of affordable rentals on island by 69%. Collectively with Eviola and Hōkūao, we will be able to provide much needed affordable units spanning the entire spectrum of AMI forever.
And Dr. Dancel, with that description, then would it be fair to say that between Eviola and Hōkūao, you are making 115 affordable units available for rentals in perpetuity?
Yes, that is correct.
Is there, or has there been interest in this project from the people who live on Lanai?
Yes, there's been tremendous amount of support and interest from the community. As mentioned by some of the testifiers, we've hosted multiple community meetings, small group discussions. We conducted a survey, and during the county's approval process for our application, many residents testified in support of the project. The survey we conducted was sent out to all of our tenants who rent from us, so they are in the rental market. 69% of those that responded expressed an interest in learning more about Hōkūao. Over the last month, we invited those that were interested to tour our model home, and there's overwhelming interest. The first question they ask is, when will it be available and when could they apply?
And let's talk a little bit about the remaining 74 units. What is the need for those units on Lanai?
We're constantly looking for housing on Lanai, and as mentioned, there are currently none available. It was mentioned earlier as well, we have employees living in hotel units because there's no long-term rentals. The survey that we conducted in March also inquired about income levels and asset levels. More than half of the respondents exceeded the household income and asset level for an affordable unit at Hōkūao. That data set, along with our current situation on island, indicates an overwhelming need for market housing.
So, based on the testimony today and your presentation, the studies you've conducted, I don't think there's any doubt that there's a need for both affordable and market rate housing on Lanai. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the specific details of the Hōkūao project. Let's start with the name. Dr. Dancel, why is the project named Hōkūao?
It's a great question. One that's rarely asked, but I'd love to share the story. The Hōkūao is the morning star of Venus when observed in the morning. Back when this project was contemplated in 2016, we asked our cultural expert, Kipaa Maui, to name the project. He thought Hōkūao was fitting because 1, it's the traditional place name of the area, and 2, with the new ownership and this being the first residential project by the ownership, the kauna or layered meaning of Hōkūao, the morning star, signals the potential that exists each new day. The Hōkūao community symbolizes the chance for fresh opportunity and conscious growth.
And would you please describe this Hōkūao project for us?
The project consists of 152 bedroom, 2-bath single family homes for rent. 76 will be affordable homes in perpetuity, as mentioned, and 74 homes will be added to our rental inventory. The interior is approximately 1150 to 1175 square feet. There's a lanai measuring 375 feet, both in the front and in the back. It also includes a garage. Lot sizes start at 8,000 square feet, which are quite large in my opinion.
And in connection with the project, what sort of amenities are being provided?
Each home will come fully furnished with modern finishes and an on-site renewable energy generation unit outfitted with Tesla tiles and a battery energy storage unit. Landscaping will be provided by PÖLAMA Lanai. Sidewalks are included on both sides of the internal streets for walkability. All utilities are included for the affordable units in their rents. These lots will be lower density than most of the lots in Lanai City, which are approximately 6,000 square feet. On-site parking at the homes, as I mentioned, the garage, as well as on the street. There'll be a community center and a park as well. I want to point out the 3 pocket parks along the southern border. And just to be clear, the community center and park will be open to all Lanai residents.
And would you please touch on the infrastructure for us?
We are developing a pre-existing groundwater well number 7, that will connect to the Lanai City distribution system along with well 6, 8, and 3. The additional water from well 7 will provide additional capacity and reliability to the distribution system.
And what is the projected water demand for the 150 new homes?
The estimated increase in average daily demand is approximately 91,700 gallons per day. Adding the project to the January 2020 12-month moving average of 1.6 million gallons per day for the entire island increases the total demand by less than 6%. This is well below the 4.3 million gallons per day threshold set by the Commission on Water Resource Management that would authorize the chairperson of CWRM to reinstitute water management area designation proceedings.
And so based on this information, was it concluded that there's sufficient water supply for the homes?
Yes, the discussion and conclusions can be found on pages 57 to 63 of the final EA.
As part of the Hōkūao project, is PÖLAMA Lanai instituting any water conservation measures?
Absolutely. PÖLAMA Lanai is passionate about water conservation. Over the last 10 years, we have invested in the water system, which included installing smart meters. 100% of the island is serviced by a smart water meter. This enables us to identify leaks early and prevent unnecessary loss of water. All homes at Hōkūao will have a smart meter and low flow fixtures. All wastewater will be treated by the county's facility and then processed and used for irrigation by PÖLAMA Lanai as we do normally.
And you'd mentioned earlier that all of the homes will have solar roof tiles with battery storage. Will that power generation system be enough to cover the power needs of the homes such that the project is not anticipated to materially require the burning of fossil fuel for power?
We review the anticipated carbon impact for the development project and determine that the homes themselves will not produce carbon emissions, and that the energy provided by the on-site renewable energy generation and power and the battery system should provide all the power consumed by the homes. We size these systems to be about 50% more than the average Lanai resident that has historically used. So we believe that this will cover more than is sufficient. This should lead to a net zero impact, though the homes will be connected to the grid in the event additional power is required.
Let's look at other infrastructure components. You'd mentioned wastewater. Is there sufficient capacity at the existing facility to service an additional 150 homes?
Capacity is currently available, and that is on a first come, first served basis. However, allocation is not reserved until building permits are issued. The Maui County Department of Environmental Management and State Department of Health Wastewater Branch support the project. DOH noted that Hōkūao or any new home cannot connect to the county's water system until the county ensures that the facility is in compliance with DOH standards.
And how will all of this infrastructure be financed?
PÖLAMA Lanai will finance 100% of the project.
If we can turn from the infrastructure components to the conceptual site plans, I'd like you to walk us through Hōkūao from a street level.
Before I walk you through a typical street, let me take a moment to provide some context to the various sections in the following slides. Here you see an overall conceptual site plan. The ingress and egress, as I mentioned earlier, is on 9th and 12th Street. They will be lined with a small canopy of trees indicated in orange shading. There will be fruit-bearing trees that will be planted at each of the homes. The idea is to create a variety of fruits so that the community can share amongst themselves. I also want to point out the 3 pocket parks, as I mentioned. They're a little bit more detailed in this rendering here. And up to the north, the community center parking lot.
Excellent.
The image on the top left is 9th Street, north of the community center indicated in orange on the site plan to the right. There will be large sidewalks with a large planter strip on each side of the road, which is 24 feet wide. The bottom image is on the left is 9th Street, south of the community center, indicated in blue on the site plan on the right. The trees switch from a small canopy trees to crook pines.
And can you tell us how 9th and 12th Streets differ from the typical residential street?
There will be sidewalks on both sides of the streets within the development. On 9th and 12th, there would just be one. The trees are going to be lined with native trees, Kukui, Kamani, and Ko, as requested by the county and agreed upon us. And the street will provide wide enough to allow on-street parking and cars to traverse in both directions.
And did the county also request the sidewalks?
The county did request the sidewalks, both sides. We had sidewalks, not within the development, but we did incorporate it on both sides. We only wanted one. We did two.
And PÖLAMA and I agreed to that condition.
Correct. We did.
And I think what we put up here is a conceptual rendering of the street view. Are we looking at the market or the affordable homes?
Both. You won't be able to discern between the two. They are identical. Lot sizes will vary slightly due to the shape of the project. Some lots are larger than others, with the smallest lot size being 8,000 square feet. Affordable and market rate homes will be built concurrently at a ratio of 51% affordable to 49% market. The homes will be a modern plantation home. The board and batten siding in the front porch allows for a similar plantation look as the homes in Lanai City. The home has a very spacious layout. The kitchen and living room are located in the central area or great room, which leads through the sliders out to the back lanai and yard. Off the main area are two identical sized bedrooms, each with its own bathroom and an access through a slider door to the back lanai and yard as well.
And can you talk a little bit about the building materials for these homes?
The primary structure will be cross-laminated timber or CLT. These are pre-manufactured cross-grain timbers that serve both load-bearing structure and provide a smart interior finish. We're using Hinoki cedar from Japan, which allows for a very unique and calming scent throughout the home. We will be constructing a manufacturing facility for the modular CLT sections for the homes at Hōkūao. Pre-build manufacturing considers economies of materials and assembly during the engineering phase before cutting and fabricating in a controlled warehouse environment. With proper planning, CLTs ultimately minimize transportation waste, installation time, and on-site trade coordination and conflicts.
And have the homes been designed for airflow or for air conditioning?
Both. There will be sliding doors spanning the great room, as I mentioned earlier. In addition to the bedrooms allowing for lots of light and air, there will be central air conditioning controlled by Nest control systems, ceiling fans, and automatic shades on all windows and doors.
And let's talk a little bit about what's included in the homes. What are you providing?
As mentioned earlier, all the homes will be furnished and landscape will be provided by PÖLAMA Lanai. Interior finishes will include custom cabinetry, quartz countertops, full-size stainless steel appliances, including dishwasher and full-size washer and dryers. Bathrooms will include porcelain tile floors. The lanais will be constructed with hardwood ipe decking. As you saw in the graphic on the previous slide, large format LED TVs will be provided in both bedrooms and in the living room as well.
And can you tell us how much it will cost to rent one of the affordable homes?
The rents are set by HUD and then adjusted by the County of Maui's Department of Housing and Human Concerns for Lanai. This is an annual process and rates are posted every May. It will depend on the renter's income and asset level. The below moderate category starts at above 80% AMI. These will be the lowest rents. They start at $998 per month and will go up to the above moderate category, which is up to 140% of the AMI. And those rents are $1,747 a month. These also include utilities.
And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the application process for the affordable units.
Yes. So we asked for an exemption from the application process that is written in the Maui County Code, and that's provided in petition exhibit number 4. We had received several accolades from the county in this application process because what we're trying to do is encourage Lanai residents or people that live and work on Lanai to apply. So you would come in and you would pick up an application, you would fill it out. You would first need to qualify for it. And then after you qualify, then you get put into a lottery, and from that lottery you're chosen, and then you would wait for your available unit. So we actually switch things around.
I appreciate that explanation. And I'd like you to talk about the data. We heard from the testifiers, we've heard from you about the need, but the data analyzed in the market and economic impact studies for this project.
Overall, there will be 687 person years of employment produced over the course of the project. They will produce an estimated 52 million in construction and wages, 19.5 million in state taxes, and nearly 7 million in county taxes. The project is expected to be fully absorbed by the market once the units are built.
And the one measure there that sometimes raises questions is what a person year is. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. One person working for 1 year is a person year. So this project will employ a lot of people from start to finish.
And we heard from one of the testifiers that no impact to the existing agriculture is expected from this project, but I know that was studied, and I'd like you to talk about the results of that study.
Yeah, the conversion of ag to urban will have a de minimis effect on agriculture available land on Lanai.
Dr. Dancel, in terms of the project timeline, when do you anticipate that it'll be completed?
We anticipate the first homes will be available in 2023 and estimate that the entire project be completed by 2025.
Let's look at the approvals that were required to get to the point we are today. PÖLAMA Lanai engaged in extensive planning, starting with the environmental assessment, which was conducted to evaluate the impact of the project and for which many technical reports were prepared. Was that final environmental assessment accepted?
Yes, the final EA was accepted and a FONSI was issued.
And in addition to the acceptance of the FEA and the FONSI, did the county council also approve this project?
Yes, on September 3rd, they adopted Council Resolution 21-136, which was our application for the affordable housing project, and it was unanimous.
And so with those approvals in place, excluding building and grading permits, those ministerial permits and approvals you'll need, what is the final approval step in the process for Hōkūao?
The Dba petition before you is the final step in the entitlement process. PÖLAMA Lanai filed a Dba petition with the Commission on October 18th, as stated earlier in the record. And because we're operating on an accelerated schedule, we're here before you today.
Dr. Dancel, we've put up on the screen a list of the technical studies that were completed, and some of those authors are available today as experts for questions and clarifications. As part of those studies in the FEA, were any significant impacts reported or anticipated?
No, there were no significant impacts, and the final EA FONSI was accepted by our approving agency, as mentioned earlier, and it was published in the environmental notice on May 23rd. We had no challenge.
In terms of the historical and cultural resources, specifically the SHPD requirements under 6E, I noticed that SHPD accepted the AIS and the archaeological inventory survey and the archaeological monitoring plan. On that note, has the project complied with Chapter 6E for purposes of historic review?
Yes, we prepared an AIS and an AMP. Both were accepted by SHPD as noted in Exhibit 3, Appendix D1, and Exhibit 13, respectively. The project complied with HRS Chapter 60.
After the FEA and the FONSI, you mentioned that you then submitted the 201H application to the County of Maui. Can you tell us a little bit about the County 201H process?
We submitted our draft application earlier this year and our final application on July 16th of this year. We attended 3 affordable housing committee meetings in August and a general council meeting in September. The council, as I mentioned earlier, unanimously approved the resolution approving the project with 14 modifications.
And I don't want to go through all the modifications. I know you've accepted them all, but there's one that I did want to mention. There's a unique requirement for teachers. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. As mentioned earlier, and there's a fair amount of discussion about that, PÖLAMA Lanai already rents to teachers. We rent about 21 units to teachers on island. And as part of our commitment to education, we are going to be adding 10 more units for the Hōkūao project. So altogether, it'll be about 31 units that we provide to teachers on Lanai.
Thank you. And Dr. Dancel, have the reviewing agencies supported this project?
We have received overwhelming support. The County of Maui Office of Planning, the County Department of Environmental Management, the HHL, DOH, and the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
We put those letters up on the screen for the commission, but they're also in the record before you. Thank you, Dr. Dancel. I don't have any further questions, and I invite the commission to ask questions if it has any.
Okay. If you can stop screen sharing, Mr. Chipchase.
Very well, Chair.
Questions for the witness?
I do not have questions, Chair.
Thank you, County. OP, SD.
I just have a few questions. Sorry, could you please confirm that you're the authorized representative for Petitioner PÖLAMA Lanai?
We have two representatives. Council, Dr. Dancel is one representative, and Mr. Matsumoto, who will speak next, is the senior representative.
Okay. In terms of the Office of Planning's conditions, would Dr. Dancel be able to agree to those?
Oh, Council, we agree to all of OP's conditions.
Okay.
9 conditions that were listed, we've accepted those. And I believe that was confirmed outside of these proceedings, but I'm happy to confirm it in these proceedings.
Okay. Petitioner is in agreement with the form of the conditions, including the condition 8 and 6?
Yes, Council.
Okay.
I believe one of those was revised and we reached agreement on it. And one we weren't able to reach agreement on it, but we accept your form.
Okay, I know there was some back and forth and I wasn't sure if there was an agreement, final agreement on the form of the condition.
There is, Council.
One moment, Mr. Giovanni.
Chair, I think there's a little bit of inside baseball going on in this conversation. I would appreciate if Mr. Chipchase and Ms. Kato could provide a reference that I could understand when they're talking about a specific condition.
You took the words out of my mouth, Commissioner Giovanni. Ms. Kato, if you wish this to influence and enlighten the commissioners, it would help if you specifically reference particular language that you're asking whether or not the petitioner is binding.
Okay, sorry, I apologize for the kind of back and forth. Before this, we communicated with petitioner to work on revisions to the conditions that OPSC proposed, which we've proposed in our testimony. We had conditions 1 through 8.
Ms. Kato, if there's you mentioned 2 particular conditions. It seems like your question is wanting to confirm what form of the conditions they've agreed to. So perhaps you would read the condition and confirm with them that that's what they've agreed to.
Well, OP proposed an additional condition number 9, which is related to the mature cooked pines that are referenced in the CIA. And the specific language is petitioner shall preserve or relocate the mature cooked pines from the rural malka of the community gardens as identified in the cultural impact assessment within the project area if practicable.
And your question for the petitioner is
this acceptable in that form?
Yes, it is acceptable.
And we also had there was another change to condition. There are 2 changes to condition 8 related to invasive species. It's in the form that OP provided in our testimony, except that the word avoid will be changed to minimize in the last sentence. And
It's
an
not
additional
exceedingly long. You could read it.
Sorry, I need to pull this up. Petitioner shall minimize the movement of plant or soil material between work sites, such as infill, so as to prevent the spread of invasive fungal pathogens and avoid importing soil, and minimize importing soil or other plant materials from off island, plus an additional sentence to address quarantine in this form. Imported plants used in landscaping shall first be quarantined in an enclosed location away from the project site, and all imported plants shall be inspected to ensure that they are free from invasive species that could arrive inadvertently. Is this condition acceptable to petitioner?
I think there might have been and maybe it's just my hearing and I missed it, but I thought that you referenced avoid and in the beginning in the statement should be minimize, petitioner shall minimize. If I heard it wrong, I apologize, but in that form, with that notation, it is acceptable. And to Commissioner Giovanni's question, I'm sorry for the inside baseball. The intent was simply to resolve the conditions to the extent possible before coming before the commission, so that we didn't have to argue over them before the commission. And in Mr. Matsumoto's testimony, I did intend to confirm, and we still will confirm, that the 9 conditions as revised between the parties are acceptable.
Okay, and so I assume then that condition, the petitioner is okay with also condition 6 in the form that was proposed in OPSD's written testimony?
Yes, Council. And so for the benefit of the commission, that condition deals with the endangered Hawaiian hoary bat. There's no evidence of the bat in the project area. Nevertheless, OP has requested and we have agreed to a condition that reads as follows. Because of the potential for the state listed Hawaiian hoary bat to occur in the vicinity of the project area, the petitioner shall avoid removing any trees during the bat birthing and pup rearing season, paren, June 1 through September 15th, close paren. If this cannot be avoided, woody plants greater than 15 feet tall shall not be disturbed, removed, or trimmed without consulting the state DLNR, DLNR DOFA. And we do agree to that condition.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple of really quick questions about density.
And to clarify, Ms. Kato, are these questions for the witness or witnesses counsel?
I guess either, but.
So we have a witness in front of us.
Okay,
Normal
probably for the
procedure is
witness.
you would address questions to the witness who is before us.
Okay, then the questions are for the witness. The
Please
lots
continue.
are, okay, thank you, Chair. So the lots are planned to be approximately 8,000 to 12,000 square feet each, is that correct?
That is correct.
You mentioned that these are larger lots than most of the house lots in Lanai City. Can you tell me the reason for the relatively large lot size?
Yes, so we wanted to design something that was providing gracious space during the pandemic, as you know, and what you've heard earlier. It's just Lanai City is very dense and condensed. People living in crowded situations, not having a yard in which the children can play in. And so part of the design was to have yard space so that the children within the home could have areas to play in, to escape. And if they had to quarantine or we were locked down again, they could still quarantine and lock down and not drive everyone nuts in the home.
Okay, is one dwelling unit per lot intended to be the maximum density for the lots?
That is correct.
Okay, can you confirm that PÖLAMA Lanai will not later increase the density on the lots by developing ADUs, if
Yes.
those are available?
Yes, and I believe that was a modification that we agreed to in one of the the 14 modifications from the county.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, I believe I saw a hand from Commissioner Chang earlier.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just have a few questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, good morning, Keiki Puan. Nice to see you.
Aloha.
I just have a few questions. Well, first of all, I really greatly appreciate the concise presentation. It was very efficient and very effective. One question, are you providing electric charging stations for vehicles as well?
There will be electric charging stations at the parking lot by the community center. So yes, they will be provided.
Yeah, the reason I ask is there's an old timer on Lanai who has complained about the charging stations. Can't remember his name right now, but so another question is, you indicated that 100% of the project is being funded by PÖLAMA Lanai. However, are there any federal triggers for this project?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay. My last question is, could you share with us, and I'm hoping you may be the proper person, what is the total cost of both construction of the houses as well as the infrastructure?
So we're not disclosing the price because we're financing it privately ourselves.
Okay.
And if there's additional questions,
yeah,
the President, Mr. Matsumoto can address that.
Okay. And the only reason I'm asking is we have had other housing projects that have come up and they're not all funded by the developer. And so I like to know what is a reasonable cost of a project, because I'm having one of my issues is the infrastructure, the cost of the infrastructure, and what isn't a reasonable performance bond to expect from a developer who is getting financing. But all right, I will honor the fact that this is a confidential, you're not disclosing those costs, but you are financing 100% of the costs. Is that correct?
That is correct. And in our application to the county, there is some letters that provide those statements from our parent company.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions. Again, I applaud you for your great project. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Thank you. Commissioner Ohigashi, followed by Commissioner Giovanni.
I noticed that in your presentation, there are phase 1 and phase 2 when they come online. How many of the houses units will be available in 2022 on completion of phase 1?
Commissioner, I don't have the exact number in front of me. Phase 1 and phase 2 is approximately 50%, so 74, 76. I would have to get back to you on that, but I can go and look. I don't have that information readily available.
And are there going to be both market rate and affordable units available?
Yes,
phase 1 and phase 2, or is it all market rates in phase 1 and affordable in phase 2?
Great question. We're actually building them concurrently. However, we're going to make them available 51% affordable, and affordable will be first, and then market. So for every 2 affordable units of affordable, then we'll build 1 market unit. So they'll be built at the same ratio of 51% to affordable to 49% market.
And that will be available in both phases. I just wanted to clear that.
Throughout the entire construction of the project, correct? That is correct.
And what are the market rate rentals?
We haven't decided on the market rate rentals yet, but just for context, I want to share with you some facts. So we have single family homes within Lanai City. These are older plantation homes. They're 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes. The average rent is $760. So we have about 440 rentals, and we understand, who we're renting it to, because majority of the renters are part of our workforce, either our workforce for seasons or sensei. And so market rate isn't normally what most people think of market rate. It's market rate on Lanai. So we haven't nailed down that, but it will be within our other available inventory. Obviously, they'll be slightly more because these are going to be brand new homes. Like I said, some of the older plantation homes from 1930s, 1940s are much older. They don't have the air conditioning. They don't have the Tesla tiles, the battery, but they will be within the range that we charge for some of our other homes, just slightly more because of the more modern finishes in a brand new home.
What would that range be? I didn't hear a number.
Yes, we haven't, as I mentioned, opened up, sorry, lots of information. We haven't we haven't had approval of a number yet. So we don't know that.
No, I think your response was that you have a range of what you are charging now.
Yeah. So what we're charging.
I was just wondering what that range is so that we can reasonably assume that it will be more than that range.
Yes. So right now so I might shock you. So some of our rents are as low as $150, $200 a month, just because of how they were honored from way back then. And they can go up to about $2,200.
So even though it's even though the low is 150 or 120, the top seems to be 2,200. Is that what you're looking to get out of the market rate home?
It's within range.
Pardon me?
It's within the range, but like I said, again, we haven't come down to a specific number.
Okay. I'm going to assume that it's like 2,200 and above, I'm guessing. The second question that I have is that sometimes in order to meet the requirements, I know that developers hire or owners hire management companies to manage the affordable rentals. Will there be a management company hired outside of your company to manage the affordable as well as I guess the market rentals?
No, we will be managing it ourselves.
And is that affordable? So in other words, do you have a plan for minimum leases for those affordable rentals? I'm just curious, is a yearly lease, or will it be multi-year lease, or will it be month-to-month lease? Do you have an idea of that?
These won't be month-to-month. These are going to be rented to the workforce on Lanai, so they're long-term rentals.
And when you say long-term rentals, that would be generally defined as over 6 months?
Annual.
Pardon me?
1 year, at least a year, annually.
So that would be part of the record that the affordable rentals will be 1 year?
Yes.
And you mentioned that there's a affordable rental scale. Will your leases be tied into that scale, assuming that that scale goes up? Or will it be a fixed number towards the leaseholder?
Yes, so we will follow county guidelines, and those rents are set, so they get adjusted every May.
So they would be adjusted every year in accordance with the guidelines.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Ohigashi. Commissioner Giovanni, followed by Commissioner Cabral.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chip Chase. Good morning, Kekipoa.
Morning.
Aloha.
So I have a few questions, Mr. Chip Chase. I'll leave it to you to whether they should be directed to Ms. Dancel or to Mr. Matsumoto.
Very good.
First has to do with the strategy that's being implemented for the decision that was made to offer long-term rentals. I think the expression in the record is in perpetuity as opposed to sale for ownership. And I applaud that strategy, by the way, on a personal basis. But can you explain the logic behind offering rentals as opposed to for sale units to meet the affordable housing demand?
I think it's a great question, Commissioner, and there is a strategy behind it. If you'd be patient, Mr. Matsumoto would be happy to address that.
That would be fine.
Thank you.
The second question, and I'm going to follow up on Commissioner Chang's inquiring about financing. And I do appreciate that it's you're doing the financing in-house, but the underlying concern is if there's any federal or third-party financing of any kind that would result in opening the qualification for the affordable housing to others than those that were represented to date in terms of the workforce on Lanai, in particular to people who don't currently live on Lanai but would love to retire there and not become part of the workforce, but somehow become qualified for this low-income housing by virtue of the financing that's being done. Can you assure us that you've looked at that and that that will not occur?
Yes, we have looked at that and that will not occur.
And thirdly, thank you for that very, we really appreciate the brevity of these answers, by the way. We often run into very long answers. So I'll try to keep my questions brief as well. And the third area has to do with the hoary bat. There's a fair amount of conjecture currently within the state. You may call your attention to a recent Civil Beat article in which the hoary, there's a possibility that the hoary bat may be delisted from the endangered species list. And my question is that in the event it's delisted, would you be amenable to modification of the condition, or at least the condition that would say that if it is delisted, that the restrictions on construction would be lifted and allow the construction to proceed on an expedited basis so that the project could be completed sooner?
Yes, if the Opeopa is delisted, or the Hawaiian hoary bat, we will continue with the modification or condition.
We would be amenable to that modified condition, Commissioner.
And just FYI, I'll put that same question to the county when they present their position.
Very good.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioner Cabral.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I read a lot of this information beforehand, and then some of the information in the presentation caused me to become confused. So I wanted to clarify some things. So when you reference using HUD guidelines, that does not in any way obligate you to, because you're not planning on using any of their HUD money, is that correct?
That is correct. The HUD guidelines are for the income levels, and that's part of the Maui County process. So they actually take the HUD guidelines and then adjust them, particularly for Lanai, for the income levels.
Okay. Okay, I do understand that. So you're able to, and then in terms of restricting who is allowed to live there, one would be their potential guidelines for their income level of their household based on their household size, and a whole lot of guidelines, I understand. Then are you also going to be able to restrict who gets to rent from you? You just referenced not to let a lot of retirees like me swoop down there or something, but you're going to be able to restrict it so that it's going to be only for your employees and are only for long-term or proven residents of Lanai. Do you have, is that what you're going to be able to do in order to not have it be a lot of outsiders coming in?
So we have to follow federal guidelines on equal housing and opportunity. So according to Maui County Code, there is eligibility criteria. And so we're following those criteria, and those are set forth by the county. And this is part of Chapter 296. And so and read to you the particular code. I believe some of it is in Exhibit 4 of our petition regarding the eligibility, but it's for residents who meet the following criteria, and the county code lists a whole bunch of criteria.
Okay, thank you, because my concern is that if you're not careful, especially if you're using any kind of federal money, then anyone from anywhere is going to see what a beautiful place this is and sign up, and you'll have everybody from transplants from the mainland all living here with their public assistance. Okay, also, since you're going to be owning the roads and you're going to be owning all the infrastructure, you're going to be owning everything. Are you going to be, since you are the only, you're going to be managing it yourself, is there any type of plans to have some kind of like homeowners or home resident association to help with the enforcement of house rules or guidelines with that type of proximity of living in your subdivision?
We're not going to have a HOA, however, in our rental agreements, there'll be house rules. And that's what we do with our other inventory on island. So there's house rules.
Okay. And then I may have missed it. I know that you're going to be having solar for your electricity. And then I think that it was there, but I didn't catch it. Are you also having electric as backup on electricity as in addition to their solar?
Yeah, so there'll be solar tiles and a battery energy storage system that will provide most, if not all. However, if someone uses more, we are still connected to the HECO grid.
Okay, good. And then is there any thought in terms of your financing, since you're going to be self-financed, if the need grows, are you limiting yourself with what you're putting forward now? Because the thought would be that perhaps in the future, you'd want to sell off some of these units and thereby provide money for future construction of additional rental units, if that were to, because in some ways, if you have a housing shortage at some point in time, if you just have more houses on the ground, you start to provide housing for everyone in the community. Is there been any thought of how to be able to move forward in the distant future if that were to be needed, additional housing by selling off what you've created now?
Yeah, so currently, Mr. Masumoto can expand on this. However, right now we don't foresee selling any of the homes at this particular time. After our rental project is constructed, the county also has a parcel, as I mentioned, next door, which is 115 acres. That's specifically for affordable housing. That's what it was deeded over, specifically to develop affordable housing. So they could develop their project, so there's opportunity there. And as we committed to in our county application, after our project, the rental project, the county's project gets developed, and if there still is a need on island, we'll be exploring more housing options ourselves or in collaboration with the county.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Another concern that I see in communities that you end up, if you have all affordable units in one area. So you did indicate that as you build them, not just you're going to build an equal number, but our 76 and 74 of market rate rental ones, but are they going to be integrated? So potentially you'll have one that's getting an affordable rate next to somebody who's playing market, or are you sectionizing and having one section be market and one geographic section be affordable?
Great question. Because all the units are identical, they could be right next door to each other.
Okay, I appreciate that very much. Thank you for the good information. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Cabral. We've been going an hour. Commissioner Okuda, about how long do you think?
2 minutes, Chair.
Okay.
If I may, I just wanted to say I didn't want my silence to be taken as somehow my disclosure means I'm just going to rubber stamp this. So I just wanted to state that for the record. And along that line, if everyone can recall, I was the only vote which opposed PÖLAMA Lanai taking water from the high level aquifer. So I'm not an automatic friend of PÖLAMA Lanai, but since all my fellow commissioners covered what questions I would have asked, I thought it's better since it's being done very efficiently today, unlike certain recent dockets we had. I would like to contribute to efficiency. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Okuda. Commissioners, any further questions for this witness? If not, I have a couple. Dr. Dancel, during the public testimony that we received this morning, one of the comments was that there is often a need for rental housing available for people who are experiencing domestic violence or other domestic disputes. Is there anything in the proposed conditions from the county or the LUC that would reserve any of these units to actually address that need?
Mahalo, Chair Dr. Scheuer. I appreciate the question. Right now, in the current modifications from the county and the conditions by the LUC, we do not address that issue. I would also, if you allow me to expand a little, we have donated a home on Lanai for the women's shelter. So we have provided a home for domestic abuse on island.
My next question also has to do with affordability or availability of housing. The word residents are given priority. How is residents defined? Is that a resident of the state or a resident of the island of Lanai?
Chair Scheuer, that is an excellent question. And I don't want to punt. However, resident is defined in Maui County Code. And maybe Mr. Hopper could expand on that, but I do have the code in front of me. Chapter 2, Maui County Code, Chapter 2.96.020 definitions. Resident means a person who meets one of the following criteria. Number 1, currently employed in the county. Number 2, retired from employment in the county, having worked in the county immediately prior to retirement. Number 3, full-time student residing in the county. Number 4, a disabled person residing in the county who was employed in the county prior to becoming disabled. Number 5, the parent or guardian of a disabled person residing in the county. Number 6, a spouse or dependent of any such employee, retired person, student, or disabled person residing in the county. Or number 7, in the event of the death of the employee, retired person, student, or disabled person, the spouse or dependent of any such person residing in the county.
So the definition of resident you're using is to follow the county's definition of resident.
We have to follow the Maui County Code according to Chapter 2.96 in our application. That is correct.
So there's no provision that we have currently in this to say, give a preference for, there were multiple witnesses who talked about the desire of people who were born and raised in Lanai and who have gone away to return. In fact, they would actually be potentially disadvantaged under this definition because there could be somebody who moved from California last week, but they're now technically a resident and they would get priority over our Keikioka who are trying to come home.
Maybe I can jump in. That's not what we're trying to do.
I'm not suggesting you're trying to do it. I'm just asking whether or not by having to adhere to that definition, that is the practical consequence.
If I may, Chair, of course we have to adhere to the definition, but if I could ask Dr. Dancel maybe to, we're sensitive to that, right? We have to adhere to the definition of resident, which is defined in accordance with the county rules, which means a resident of the county. I don't think they're loose enough that the situation you described could occur. They're all tied to employment or other factors that Dr. Dancel went through. But I would like Dr. Dancel maybe to talk about what we did, because we are sensitive to that with respect to the application process.
Yes. So if you look at the application process, we put in perceived barriers potentially. You have to come in person. We're not putting the application online, so you have to physically come into our office and pick up an application. If anyone's traveled to Lanai or attempted to travel to Lanai recently, it's not that easy. Flights are limited and flights get canceled often. So that is a natural barrier already. And that is a practice that we do, not just with the Hōkūao affordable units, it's with our other units and inventory. So you have to physically come into the office and pick up an application. We also have an interview process as well in this for the affordable units as well as the market units. So we're trying to, make it as easy as possible that it goes to Lanai people that live and work there. we not only provide housing to our employees or our affiliates, but to teachers, as I mentioned earlier, to people that provide doctors, nurses, so people that provide services on Lanai. And that's, without breaking any federal laws or getting, caught into a situation. We just have to be about how we put the information out.
So, and to be clear, the intention of my question is not to criticize PÖLAMA Lanai, but to really mark that we have this really gap in our, after 7 years, I'm painfully aware of this gap in our conversations about affordable housing in Hawaii, where we hear from the public and they're like, yeah, I want my kids to be able to move home. And then we approve things, but we actually don't have provisions to actually make that occur. So it's good to hear about the steps that you're taking to at least try and address some of those concerns in the fairly great gulf between what we actually approve versus what our desires are.
Totally understand, just to touch on that, Chair, totally understand where you're coming from. And, I think that what we've tried to do is within those frameworks, within the legal frameworks that we have, do what we can to address that concern, that need on Lanai.
I'd be open to any expanded language that would further, within the constraints of federal fair housing law, allow us to address that real desire that our people have. I'll just briefly note, we were not the accepting agency on this environmental assessment, so I disagree generally with the assessment that just because pumping is below sustainable yield, that means a particular well source is sustainable, but I will leave that for now. I want to ask about county's condition 2, which is an unusual condition. And if I can read it correctly for the benefit of my fellow conditioners that might not have it immediately in front of them, proposed county condition 2, which is to be incorporated and hence become an LUC condition, is the petitioner must establish a policy to affirmatively protect any PÖLAMA Lanai employee residing within the project to express themselves freely, even in opposition to PÖLAMA Lanai or its affiliates, without fear of retaliation from the company or loss of home or employment. Dr. Dentzel, could you expand upon the ways in which PÖLAMA Lanai intends to fulfill that condition and address how the LUC might attempt to, or the county might attempt to enforce said condition?
If you'll indulge me, Chair, I think that question is a good one because it is an unusual condition, maybe a unique condition. But I think Mr. Matsumoto would be a more appropriate witness.
I'm happy to direct it to Mr. Matsumoto instead.
Thank you, Chair.
I have nothing further and appreciate the responses. Is there anything further, commissioners? If there's none, I'd like to be done with this witness take, and my desire is to take a 10-minute break and then see if in another hour we can wrap up conversation, a witness from Mr. Matsumoto prior to taking lunch. Is that acceptable?
Yes, Chair.
Commissioners? Okay, it is 11:31. We will reconvene at 11:41. Staff, don't touch the meeting screen.
She's just one staff person, Natasha.
I didn't say which one. Mr. Hopper. Maui County. Mr. Hart, do you know where your counsel is?
I just spoke to him. I believe he should be at his desk. Text him.
Okay. It's 11:41. We were back in session. Mr. Chip Chase, I neglected to ask if you had any redirect for your previous witness.
No harm, no foul, Chair. I have none.
Okay, thank you. Shall I swear in your next witness?
Please, Chair, Mr. Matsumoto has joined us.
Okay, it's nice to see you. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Please
And-
proceed.
Thank you, Chair. And Mr. Matsumoto, would you please introduce yourself to the Commission?
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your service to the state. My name is Kurt Matsumoto. I am the President and Chief Operating Officer of PÜLAMA Lanai.
And Mr. Matsumoto, before we get into your professional background, I'd like to just ask you where you're from.
Sure. Lanai is my home. I was born and raised on Lanai, and my family has been on Lanai for 3 generations.
Would you describe for us your job responsibilities for PÜLAMA Lanai?
Yes, sure. I lead the management team that works with the Lanai community, and we work to plan and implement a broad range of activities. They include sustainable commerce, energy, conservation, healthcare, housing, education, and hospitality business initiatives.
And how long have you been with PÜLAMA Lanai?
I've been with PÜLAMA Lanai since the beginning. I established the company 9 years ago.
What kind of work did you do before joining PÜLAMA Lanai?
I've been in resort and private club management and development here in Hawaii from 1990 until the present time. I've lived and managed people and business operations on Lanai, Hawaii Island, and Kauai.
And if we focus now on the engagement for the Hōkūao project, how many meetings were held for Hōkūao?
We held 4, but due to COVID, 2 were in person and 2 were virtual. We've been talking about this project with the community for quite some time now.
And in those discussions, what has been the reaction from the community about this project?
We found community support to be very strong for this project. As you heard in the testimony earlier, we hosted 4 community meetings starting back in 2016. And up until most recently, the last one was in July. We've had a total of 277 participants. And this doesn't include numerous small group meetings that we held in previous years and this year. And public hearings were also held in connection with the draft EA process and council review of the 201H application. During the affordable housing meetings, 21 individuals testified in support on e-comment and in person. And there were 10 petitions totaling 367 resident signatures via e-comment, which demonstrates a broad support across the community. During the Maui County Council meeting for Bill 10, there was a petition signed by 175 residents supporting Hōkūao.
And we've talked some today about the modifications that were required by the county as part of that 201H process. I'll start there. Does PÜLAMA Lanai agree to the 14 modifications that have been imposed by the county as part of the 201H approval?
Yes, we agree with the county. All 14 modifications adopted by Council Resolution number 21-136 and with Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, all 9 conditions are stipulated between the parties.
Okay, so you anticipated the second part of my question. We also have reached agreement with the Office of Planning on the 9 conditions, and we accept those, including as read into the record today.
Right.
And I'd like to put this project in the context of PÜLAMA Lanai's vision for Lanai. What is the vision of PÜLAMA Lanai?
Yes, thanks for that question. Our vision for Lanai is to have an island that is or has a vibrant economy, a healthy community that is resilient and optimistic about the future for generations yet to come.
And how does Hōkūao fit within that vision?
Hōkūao is an important part of our vision. In order to have a healthy and happy workforce, we need to have a variety of housing types. Hōkūao will bring much needed inventory as we continue to grow the workforce size and add more dimension to our economy. This development will set the tone for future housing as the need arises.
Dr. Dancel has talked to us today about the affordable units and the application process. I'd like you to talk a little bit, and partly it came up in questioning, about how PÖLAMA Lanai allocates the priority for the remaining housing, not only in Hōkūao, but on Lanai.
So I think it's helpful to understand in practice what we have been doing. So for example, we currently own 459 rental units, and we assist in managing another 48. So well over 500 units are in our care. And of that number, there's only 52% of that number that actually either work directly for us or work for the Four Seasons Resort. The rest come from various sectors of the community. It could be government employees, it can be private small businesses. We have doctors, nurses. So it's a broad range of people, and basically what we do is we try to fill our housing and have workforce on the island occupy it.
And so coming back to Hōkūao specifically, you talked about, setting the tone. How does Hōkūao fit in that system that you've developed and your vision, and help to set the tone for your vision going forward?
So as I mentioned, we've been working on Lanai now for 9 years, and we've changed things in my mind, in a positive way. Our resorts are growing in popularity. Employment is exceeding historic levels. We introduced hydroponic farming, and their products have been well received throughout Hawaii. And as a result, we even plan to add more capacity to that project. At 150 units, Hōkūao will absorb the existing demand for housing, and it also leaves some room for growth.
And both you and Dr. Dansel have mentioned sustainability and resiliency. And can you touch on for us, how does Hōkūao incorporate those goals?
Sure. Hōkūao is really forward-looking in its sustainability design and construction. The solar PV roof and battery storage make these the greenest homes on the island, and it'll serve as a model for future housing on the island. In addition, we're building a community center that will add to the spaces that are available for community to have social and other types of activities or events that serve to build connections within our community.
And are the sustainability efforts at Hōkūao consistent with PÖLAMA Lanai's other efforts to promote sustainability?
Yes, the Hōkūao Affordable Housing Project is a piece of the puzzle. There are other actions that we've already taken on the island. Over the past 9 years, our employees have been engaged in land stewardship, cultural preservation, and water conservation activities throughout the island. We have a record of protecting endangered species of plants and birds and insects. And we've begun a 20,000 acre watershed and shoreline preservation project that stretches Mauka to Makai on our windward side of the island. Our culture and heritage preservation team has spent hundreds of man hours preserving cultural sites, adding interpretive signage, and even teaching youth on the island about the historic places on Lanai. Our investments in water infrastructure have resulted in reductions in our water use, and we're the first water system to be 100% smart metered. Coming back to Hōkūao specifically, we're adding a high quality, sustainable, smart housing, which we believe will help us preserve the lifestyle in Lanai City and other parts of the island.
Thank you, Mr. Matsumoto. I appreciate your time today. I don't have any further questions for Mr. Matsumoto, Chair. Of course, he's available for questions from the Commission. I did want to maybe ask two of those that the Commission had asked earlier, just to make sure that we get them on the record. And the first was with respect to—
Why don't we stop screen sharing,
yes.
Mr. Chip Chase?
Very good, Chair. The first is with respect to the strategy in making the affordable units in a rental pool for perpetuity as opposed to for sale.
Yes, sure. I appreciate the question that was raised. I've been fortunate because I've been part of Lanai's change from plantation into hospitality, and I've watched it evolve over the last almost 30 years now. And in being part of this, I recognize that there are some conditions that were set up that are well-meaning, but then now I'm here 30 years later and seeing, wow, maybe there could be improvements made. So affordable housing is one of them. So there are rental units that we had from the previous landowner that were designated affordable, but they were set to sunset in a short period of time. And so in reviewing our plans for Hōkūao as affordable, for the affordable section, I felt that it was important to leave those units in rentals in perpetuity, in affordable rentals in perpetuity, because the need for that, I'm sure, will continue to be in existence in the future. And rather than see the churn of housing that falls out and goes into other categories or maybe even get sold, I wanted to make sure that we had them preserved over time.
Thank you for that explanation. And the other question.
Sorry, Mr. Chief Justice, I'm going to definitely reserve the right when it comes to LUC questioning the chance for our commissioners to do follow-ups.
Oh, absolutely, Chair. And I didn't mean to preempt that. I just wanted to make sure that these questions that had been asked and I had asked for deferral to Mr. Matsumoto didn't get lost along the way.
I appreciate that very much.
That's all, Chair. The other question that did come up was the Chair's question with respect to modification number 2. And I was hoping that you could address that, of course, subject to follow-up questions or any questions from the Commission.
Sure. I can't speak to the motivation by council for inserting that condition. We did have discussions at the time directly with them. I did voice that I disagreed with the premise that there were this unspoken threat for speaking out against the company. But having grown up there on the island and worked through 2 different landowners, I can understand that there is this this thought that there's just so much control and that Big Brother is always watching what you're doing, and if you don't support Big Brother, you're in trouble. But it's such a fallacy. During the previous landowner and during this current landowner, there is no evidence, there's nothing that indicates that that is occurring. And secondly, I've even gone to departments talking about different initiatives that we've had over the years. And I expressly mentioned the fact that they don't have to support us. I know that in the past, people will come to them and just say that they want you to support our position. But I always say that it's up to you. You can decide what you want. I can just give you our perspective, give you facts, and you have to make a choice. So I think I understand where maybe what the intent was, but I have no idea how it can be enforced and or how it can be proved that there is any kind of underlying threat or even an overt threat.
Thank you, Mr. Matsumoto. I appreciate that. And Chair, I offer Mr. Matsumoto for questions.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with the county.
Thank you, Chair. I do not have questions.
Thank you. Ms. Kato, questions for the witness?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners. Commissioner Giovanni.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Matsumoto, for coming before us today and making the time. I would like to follow up a little bit on the question that Mr. Chip Chase put to you about the strategic direction to offer rentals in perpetuity. Can you express, from your perspective, the demand for the housing that would steer you to offer rentals versus for sale?
So as I expressed earlier, I've witnessed things like conditions for affordable housing fall off over time. And once that happens in a place like where we operate, there's no telling when more will come up. So my thought about leaving the affordable in perpetuity was to ensure that whoever is going to be in my slot after I'm gone is still going to have to maintain that affordable rental availability. So that's the primary motivation. Also, I have friends, classmates that live on the island that don't own their own homes. They don't intend to. They're going to continue to rent. So having this category available was, I felt, important, and that's to have continuity of families on the island.
So when you use the expression fall off, are you talking about affordable housing that sunsets and flips to market?
Correct. So like, a condition that says you must have X number of affordable housing for a period of 30 years. At the time, 30 years sounds like a long time, but once it's gone, it's gone. I think a lot of these conditions are assuming that there's just going to be this ongoing development. There's always going to be a housing developer that's going to come up, and then I'm going to be able to ask that developer to put up more affordable housing. But that's not going to always be the case on Lanai.
So, excuse me, in your testimony, you referenced the acquisition of affordable housing from the prior owner that would sunset. Could you explain what is going to happen to those units that you now manage and own that will be sunsetting? How many are there, and when will that happen?
So there are apartments that we own, and there's 39 units that would have sunsetted, I believe, in June of next year.
This year.
Oh, sorry, they had already expired, but we chose to extend them.
Could you explain what you mean by extend? Is it
we're going to maintain them in perpetuity as affordable.
So you have adopted a policy, it's a public policy that they will remain in rental in perpetuity?
It is public, and it is going to be part of our commitment to the Hōkūao project.
The last line of questioning I have has to do with supply and demand. It appears that from the public testimony we've received today, as well as the on-record testimony, as well as your own testimony and that of Mrs. Dancel, that the demand for affordable housing far exceeds the current supply. It's also on record that this project started in 2016 and it will not be completed till 2023, which is 7 years. And you've also, not only today in general, but in your company's public filings, shown that there's going to be great growth in enterprise on the island of Lanai, both in the various projects of diversified projects from PÖLAMA Lanai. I'm very concerned that this demand will always exceed supply. So can you give us any insight into your vision of how you're going to balance, or how the role that PÖLAMA Lanai as the overwhelming landowner on Lanai will address this ongoing supply-demand issue for housing?
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. So I would answer, if you would mind indulging me. When I first started, we inherited from the previous landowner a lot of housing inventory that was not being used. And it had, the condition of the housing wasn't usable. So part of that happened because this was a few years after 2008. I think we all remember there was a serious recession, and the island actually lost almost 10% of its population. So resiliency, having gone through that and seeing what effect it has on the island, thinking about resiliency, thinking about diversifying what types of businesses that we have, but also making the business that exists as resilient and durable as possible. So number one, we've been focusing our hospitality efforts on low density and extreme high end of the market, because we've seen over time, historically in Hawaii, that is the most resilient part of the hospitality businesses. The second is the diversification. And I mentioned earlier about us starting a hydroponic farming operation. It is going to be, it is already, I think, the largest hydroponic farming operation in the state. And we intend to add to that. So as an example of the types of things that we have already been doing. So I think in hearing your question, you're worried about one landowner and whether or not it's capable of maintaining employment and whether it's capable of keeping up with the housing demand. And I believe that we are. I think we're demonstrating it with this application. And as I said, if the good news would be if we had to build more, if the demand is strong enough and the employment needs continue to grow, and we'd have to look to you again for yet another DBA. And that actually would be good news to us. But we're letting it happen organically. So we're not trying to push it to a certain level. We want it to happen as naturally as possible.
So I commend you for having that insight. I hope, it's a personal hope, that you can incorporate into your planning process the need and the timing for such housing, so that we don't end up in this chronic cycle of what we heard this morning, where we've got 3 families living in 1-bedroom apartments, you know, in dire need of housing, even though they have employment on the island. And you play the critical role in making that, despite the fact it would be organic growth, but looking ahead and anticipating the need and starting the process for this additional housing as soon as possible. So I just hope you can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well taken.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioner Ohigashi.
Notice in your presentation that there's a 115 unit County of Maui area being planned, as well as a Department of Hawaiian Homelands plan. Are you aware of any of the status of those plans and for expansion of additional housing on Lanai?
Yes, Commissioner, I believe that the county's intention is to move forward. And our development would actually help to enable that to occur by us. The location that we are building allows us to help them by stubbing out some infrastructure. And in the county's original plan, that was the big impediment, was getting the infrastructure established. And If can I put up the map again?
Please
So
do.
I believe it's going to be important to the county. I know that our council representative is pushing very hard for it to happen and move forward. And I know it's a priority for him. And I believe the mayor will be supportive of it. So here is the image I think that you're referring to. Then you'll notice the location of our acreage is adjacent to what the county owns. Now, some of that land has been designated to be an expansion of the school. So you notice where the circle, the white circle is located. That's where the school is located. In the blue is Department of Hawaiian Homes. So if you see the end or the corner of where the Hawaiian Homes land is the end of what is known as 5th Street on Lanai. That's the end of the infrastructure. So for the county to start and not actually build on the site that has been reserved for a school expansion, they would actually have to extend 5th Street several hundred yards. And that cost was inhibiting the movement forward. Now, with our project, there is no long run of infrastructure that has to occur. They can stub out from our project and much more easily establish their project. Thank you for the, you can.
Could we, just for the transcript, Mr. Chipchase, would you specify what slide number this is of what exhibit?
Yes, Chair. It's slide number 4 from the presentation that Dr. Dansel provided. And at the close of my presentation, I will offer the full set of slides into the record.
Okay.
Again, I was curious about that since I noticed it was so close to the county, and if there's any kind of sharing of potential infrastructure development for those future developments. I think in a way you've answered that, but I'm not sure if there are any specific offsite improvements that were required of you that would benefit those sections. So I'll leave that question to the county if they have anything. My next question, area of question, goes back to the rental. What concerns me is that the market rate rentals, but I don't know if it concerns me, but what I'm trying to put into my mind is, are there going to be any type of residential restrictions on the market rate?
Commissioner, are you, when you say residential restrictions, are you concerned about whether the rentals will become like a vacation rental or someone not intending to live full time on Lanai? Is that what your concern is?
That's part of my concern. It is.
Sure, and that
and of course, people. For example, they're what they call bestos, or they're little sort of houses in Japan that you can go rent for about 2 months' time at a price, and then that's what I'm considering. So I'm just concerned about whether or not market rate would assist in adding to the housing inventory by limiting it or targeting it for residential purposes for residents.
I understand now, Commissioner. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, so we will not rent as vacation rental. That is not the purpose of building these homes. This is for the development of our workforce and the growth of our workforce. our needs in order to be resilient as an island is to continue to be successful in growing our business. In order to do that, we need workers, we need people. And as was mentioned earlier, we are trying to do that. We're behind the curve. We have people living in hotels and we need to get them out. And so our intention is not to create more vacation rentals. We don't need them.
Sorry, one moment. Mr. Chipchase, I'm afraid your paper churning is kind of getting picked up a lot on the mic, and which might interfere with the recording.
I appreciate the notice, Chair. I'll move the mic a little farther away.
Sorry.
Certain papers.
It's just without a live court reporter and instead relying on the recording, it becomes particularly important. Sorry to interrupt, Commissioner Ohigashi.
And the last area of questions is really about that the affordable rentals will be held in perpetuity for affordable rental. The market rentals, will those be held in perpetuity for rental purposes, or will they be eventually offered for sale?
So our plan is to have them be rentals. I'm not sure if they will be in perpetuity. What we know of is we know that there's been residents wanting to own their own homes, and one of the thoughts that we have is once we finish building out this project, and if this is allowing us to stabilize the rental market on the island, then we could possibly look at selling some of the older homes that we own in town. And hopefully that's something that we can do in the future. We would not want to sell homes if we continue to have a strong demand for rentals. And as I mentioned earlier, success to us would be we finish this project and we project out that there's going to be need for more housing in the future, and we are actually looking at that already.
So would the answer be yes, that in the future, these homes, the market rental rate homes will be offered for purchase?
They could be offered for purchase. Yes, they could. But, you know, I look at history as an example, and we've had the previous landowner, from the previous landowner, we inherited over 400 units, and those rentals had been in existence for over 30 years. So is there ever going to be a time where we could foresee us not needing rentals? I'm not sure.
And just following on the same, sir, when you develop the affordable rentals and market rentals, and from what I understand, Ms. Danzo's testimony was that you intend to intermix these together. Would that intermixture, would that plan, if you're going to sell it if you may be offering it for sale eventually, would that plan be sort of like counterproductive? Wouldn't the plan be to set an area where the affordable rentals are? Since they look like the same kind of homes.
They are in fact identical. They'll be the same, and the neighborhoods will look the same. Our vision of Hōkūao is you could drive down the street and you would not be able to tell whether it's an affordable tenant or a market rate tenant. That would be our vision of success with this project.
And is there anything, I'm sorry, but going back to my previous point, is there anything in the record or in any of the conditions that would make sure that none of these homes are used for vacation type of rentals or for non-resident rentals? Is there anything in that that would sort of, any of the conditions that would limit that from happening?
Yes, Commissioner, in the council's conditions, there is condition 11, which says short-term rental homes and other transient accommodations are prohibited within this project.
And Ms. Dancel said that your plans are to, whether it's market or affordable, would be for 1 year leases.
That's correct.
I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Higashi. Commissioners, further questions for the witness? Commissioner Cabral.
Thank you for all your information, and more so, I'll, like my fellow Commissioner Okuda, I won't even ask a question. I'm going to praise you in your concept. I've been working on the Big Island in housing for about 40 years in residential rentals and condominium and homeowners associations. And so I'd recommend you write this all out and send it to the federal government, the state government, and the county government as a model of what housing should be taking care of, as opposed to what they might be doing now. So my praise to the concept, and I hope you've got, other people had questions, I guess, on your financing. So that would be my only concern is I think the whole concept's great, but you've got the funds, you've got the money. What can you tell us about the absolute availability of making sure this great idea is gonna make it?
Yes, Commissioner, thank you for that comment, and your question is well received. So the financing is 100% self-financed. We don't have any loan. There's no debt. There is no federal, state, county funding that is being used for this development at all.
Yeah, so you already have yourself, because you have enough money in your own backing, your own company has enough funds to be able to do all of this, because the infrastructure has got to be massive.
It is.
Okay. So, but that's what makes it, you don't have any strings attached, because when you borrow government money, then you have to have all of those other projects attached to it. So, okay, yes. Well, God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll break my rule and ask a question. You know, Mr. Matsumoto, even though I've never met you until seeing you on video today, I believe a lot of the success of your company and the fact that Mr. Ellison has not faced a lot of things is basically because of you. And you seem to have, rightly so, carried on your family legacy just like your brother had. And by the way, I don't socialize with your brother, the attorney, at all. But maybe I can ask you this. You know, we got to weigh credibility of witnesses, and I personally find you very credible. We can put our faith in you. But one day Kurt Matsumoto may not be around. I mean, what kind of assurance would we have, or what can you tell us about how, even if you're not going to be around, the same spirit that you bring as a local boy from Lanai will continue forward?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Commissioner. So I can answer it in several layers. First, I think it starts with Mr. Ellison himself and his commitment to the island. I'm sure you've seen that he is now a full-time resident of Lanai, so he's not an absentee owner. In conversations with him over the years, I can tell you honestly that he does appreciate a lot of the character of the island. You know, it's, for example, there are fishing shacks that are on our property. They've been there for generations, and he stumbled upon them, and he told me no one will touch those units. Those are not to be removed. Those are not to be touched. he definitely has an appreciation for Lanai's history, and he is aware that there's a huge responsibility that comes with owning an island. At the level that we're at on the ground operationally, I've made efforts to look for people who understand the mission of and the responsibility of managing an island, and being responsible for the outcome for not just the workers, but the residents in general. And I have also looked very hard for ways to attract people who've grown up on the island. We do look at that on an annual basis and try to measure out how successful have we been in filling positions with people who graduated from high school on the island, as an example. We just recently was able to fill a management position in our facilities maintenance department with someone who didn't graduate from high school in Lanai, but his roots are from Lanai. He grew up as a youth there and left for a time and now has returned. So we're actually very proud of the fact that we're able to do that. And hopefully that'll continue well into the future. And then there's the workforce in general. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I make it a point to express to people that they can say whatever they want. It's okay for them to express their opinions. We just did a survey, for example, about the market that we own. Just to step back for a second, everything we do has a huge impact on Lanai. That's pretty obvious. So we don't want to take things for granted. During the pandemic, the Richards Market, Pine Island Market was a huge lifeline for the island. Now, you know, we hope to be stepping a little bit, a few degrees outside of where we were a year ago. But we did a survey, and a lot of it was really good. There were a lot of things that I didn't like hearing, but there are customers and we have to respond to that. And we have to understand that people are going to have opinions that are not going to be so kind. And we have to accept that. That only means that we just have to do a better job. When it comes to things like politics, we have to do a better job communicating. If we get a lot of pushback, it's our own fault because we haven't done enough. And so I think that there is building up a legacy. So rather than walking into something that has no culture established, I think that there is developing a stronger workplace culture on the island and a commitment that residents have some tangible proof of. I mentioned earlier the conservation work on the island, the cultural preservation work that's being done on the island. So I think there is enough of a legacy that even after I'm gone, these will be durable activities that will continue well after I'm not associated anymore.
And you don't have any plans to leave like next year or anything like that, is that correct? Oh, okay, I have a question / comment to your counsel, Mr. Chip Chase. You know, we're not the accepting agency for the environmental assessment, and I, you know, to try to avoid using legal terms, but I think that's almost like law of the case at this point in time. But, you know, based on the testimony that at least I've heard, you know, it seems like these projects are pieces of a bigger vision for Lanai. And at some point in time, if everything is like pieces to a bigger puzzle, doesn't the super ferry case, that's Sierra Club versus Department of Transportation 115 Hawaii 399, which is the 2007 Hawaii Supreme Court case, doesn't that say that at some point in time, PÖLAMA Lanai has to come up with a full-on environmental impact statements, at least the community as a whole, and maybe it's not even just the Lanai community, but it's the statewide community can weigh in and give their input on what might be the plan going forward. That at some point in time, we cannot go forward with just isolated, isolated Fonzies or EAs that we can't parcel this thing out that way. You have any comment on that?
My opening comment would be that I would have been disappointed if I made it all the way through this hearing without discussing some obscure legal principle with you, Commissioner. It has become one of my favorite parts of our engagements. I totally understand where you're coming from and have respect for not only that decision, but the non-segmentation principle in general. I would say that with respect to the projects that PÖLAMA Lanai has proposed and that are in the works, they are standalone projects. And so doing separate environmental assessments for them is appropriate, even though they are guided by a larger overall vision. And so I think that we've remained faithful in everything we've done to the principles of the super ferry case and the other guidance, both in statute and in case law. The opportunity to comment on a statewide basis, of course, those environmental assessments, regardless of the accepting authority, whether it's the LUC, as it may be if we come before you for an initial boundary amendment, or the county, as we do in this case when we come before you at the end of the process, all of those are published and they're all open for public comment. And we do, as in any EA, take those comments and address them in the final when we go back to any agency and request a FONSI. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I think that engagement is critical. And I think that we have remained faithful to the engagement and to the guiding principles.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Matsumoto, for your testimony also. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Okuda. Commissioners, anything further for Mr. Matsumoto? If not, I will try and be brief. Well, first, just a response to Mr. Chipchase that I don't think the super ferry and the idea of segmentation is necessarily an obscure legal principle, but
not obscure to you, Chair. In a general societal matter, it's probably not as well known as you might think.
I will concede that point. I took in all the statements, Mr. Matsumoto, that you shared about your perceptions of the ability to speak freely on the island, whether or not you're an employee of PÖLAMA Lanai or not. I don't think we're actually even set up to sort of investigate that. I think we're more narrowly focused on the county's putting this provision. They've asked it to be a condition. It's going to be incorporated as a condition on our decision and order. And so regardless of the existence or non-existence of fear of speaking out against the company, there is this proposed condition too. And I'm curious as to how we might envision it being implemented, since it calls for the implementation of a policy, and how it might be enforced as a condition. Because just as a commissioner, I have a hard time putting in conditions that make you feel good, but don't necessarily have any sort of value and ability to be implemented.
Would you like me to answer?
Or maybe county might want to answer.
Well, I think you see us struggling because we're not sure, Chair.
You've agreed to the condition, correct?
We have agreed to the condition. We accept it. It was what the council wanted, regardless of what we perceive to be the actual situation on the ground or the ability to police that condition, shall we say. And so we have accepted it and we don't oppose it, and we recognize it'll be incorporated into any order that issues from this body.
So even if I may, even if the thoughts are preliminary, presumably you've given some thought to how will we abide by this condition? If you could share, to the degree that you've given thought to how you will abide by that condition, what those thoughts are.
Well, certainly, Chair.
So, at the time when this was brought up, I have to say I felt like if we didn't agree to the condition, we wouldn't have had the project passed. I didn't understand the reason or rationale behind this, other than just someone's feeling or intuition. So as far as how we would have to enforce it or administer it, I think I've expressed in terms of how we would do it, both in spirit and practicality, which is to overtly say to people who are employed by us directly that we don't have a problem with them not agreeing with us or even testifying in public against us. It's not going to cause them to lose their job.
And Chair, then if I may take Mr. Matsumoto's statement and put it in the technical terms of the condition, I believe what you're hearing from him is that we have that policy called for by this condition in place. That is the policy of the company. And that, to me, is what the condition requires, is to establish such a policy.
Would it be incorporated into the rental agreements? As it pertains to the loss, the portion of the proposed condition that says you shall not lose your housing as a result of.
You know, I don't know how you could, isn't there like a theory about whether you can prove a negative with a negative? I mean, I don't see how you could put a condition in that you cannot actually say was the reason for somebody not having housing. I mean, anybody could say that, well, I no longer have housing because of I said something wrong. But that's why I was not really clear about why this condition had to be inserted into the record by the county. But having this kind of a condition in a lease is not something that I would be concerned with, because I know that that is not something that we would practice. It's the same as we would not terminate someone just for disagreeing with us.
Commissioner Okuda?
Yeah, as a follow-up, Chair, if I can raise a obscure esoteric issue with Mr. Chipchase and see whether he agrees with this. And by the way, I'm just trying to be a little bit efficient here. Mr. Chipchase, you do agree that there already is a Hawaii Supreme Court case called Windward Partners versus De Los Santos. That's 59 Hawaii 104, better known as the Waihole Valley eviction cases. And that's the case where tenant farmers went to the Land Use Commission to testify against Joe Powell's proposed reboundary designation from ag to urban of Waihole Waikani Valley. And after they testified, they all got eviction notices. And in the end, I think one of, in fact, maybe it's your former partner or current partner, Michael Hare, who resigned his partnership temporarily from your law firm so he could represent the Waihole Waikani Community Association, and litigated that case where the Supreme Court said that, hey, if the facts show that there's this type of retaliatory eviction going on for example, testifying at the Land Use Commission, then the eviction is going to be held invalid. Is that a fair statement of the law?
Commissioner, it is. Your recollection of the history and your recollection of the case law with respect to retaliatory eviction is accurate, and I share it. And perhaps the scariest thing for one of us is that that's exactly where my mind went to, is that this is already a legal principle. And so the condition in my mind, and so far as housing is concerned, simply duplicates what the law would already require.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to just raise that as commentary and just to see whether you and I actually could agree on something, even though most of the time, well, at least we agree on this. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Okuda. Commissioner Cabral?
Since I work in the industry, let me assure you there are massive federal laws under federal fair housing that would protect those tenants. And one would not want to cross that because there's an agency, Federal Fair Housing Agency in Honolulu with, I'm assuming, very highly paid people just looking to justify those paychecks. So I, of course, avoid that completely all the time, as I'm sure they will on Lanai in spirit and in practice. Thank you.
So if I may to continue, what I'm gathering from the various exchanges is that the response of the company, say in an annual report as to how they are complying with these conditions, might be to restate and reference both internal policies and clarify what those policies are, as well as an ongoing commitment to comply with various court rulings and federal fair housing laws in order to comply with this condition too.
I think that's a fair statement, Chair.
Okay. I think it's important, given the unusual nature of this condition, that we have something in the record of these proceedings as to what we think the intent is and how it is intended to be complied with, so that the future COO of PÜLAMA and the future land use commissioners are not fully scratching our heads as to what we were talking about. I have nothing further. Commissioners, is there anything further? Do you have any redirect, Mr. Chip Chase, for the witness?
No, Chair.
Okay. It is 12:38. We've been going another hour. What further do you have in your presentation, Mr. Chip Chase?
Chair, I will again make the offer when we resume. I know it's time for a break. When we resume, I'll again make the offer to bring on any technical expert that may need to address a question that the commission has. I didn't hear any myself today.
Yeah,
So
can I just quickly pull commissioners? Any desire for any of the other individuals on the witness list? I can see Arnold shaking his head no, so.
as long as Commissioner Wong says no, that's good enough for me. So then, Chair, I will release those witnesses, and then I have about 10 minutes for my closing presentation.
Okay, so I'd prefer to get done earlier rather than later. I'd prefer to take a shorter lunch rather than a longer one. It's 12:40. I would love to reconvene in 35 minutes at 1:15 to proceed with the closing comments from Mr. Chip Chase, proceed to the County of Maui, who I understand has a short, very brief presentation, and anything from OP. Mr. Giovanni.
I just want to comment for the record that I'm quite confident that Mr. Wong's absence of questions is due to his hunger.
That is very correct, Commissioner.
The chair is momentarily speechless. So reconvene at 1:15 and we'll proceed, and hopefully that might be just a further hour to go through the ending of presentations, any final questions, and move on to deliberation. We will recess for 35 minutes, reconvene at 1:15.
Bonnie, I think we need a snack too now, snack break besides lunch break. Dan? Well, maybe you're mute. Maybe not.
Okay, so we have Commissioners Wong, Okuda, Shorin Cabral, Giovanni, Chang, and Ohigashi. Okay, I think we're ready to go. It's 1:15. Thanks to everyone for being on time. We are back on the record. We concluded the direct testimony from Mr. Matsumoto. Mr. Chip Chase, you had some remarks to make.
Indeed, I do. Mr. Matsumoto is still with me, and my remarks are really just to take the commission through my closing presentation, which focuses on the standards for approval. And so if I may I share my screen. I'll move through this as quickly as possible.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Chair. And so what we've put on through the slides is the standards, and we'll walk through them. And I'll begin with the standard for approval, and that's a clear preponderance of the evidence. This is a more likely than not standard. The considerations for approval under that standard are whether the proposed project or Hōkūao project is reasonable, not violative of HRS 205-2, and consistent with the policies and criteria established pursuant to 3 statutes. The first is HRS 205-16, which requires conformance with the Hawaii State Plan. The next is HRS 205-17-17, the Commission's decision-making criteria. And the third is HRS 205A-2, which is the Coastal Zone Management or CZMA program. I'll discuss each in turn. The first requirement is that the boundary amendment is reasonable. And I believe through the evidence that has been accepted in the record, the testimony you heard today, and the support shown by the public and by the agencies, that the boundary amendment is reasonable and that there is a need for both affordable and market rate housing on Lanai, and that the petition area will continue the adjacent city-like concentrations of people, structures, and streets with urban levels of service. And based on that evidence, that the boundary amendment is reasonable. Turning to the second requirement, section 205-2 provides in part that urban districts shall include activities or uses as provided by ordinances or regulations of the county within which the urban district is situated. And here, as I opened with, we come to the Commission in a little bit of the opposite posture that I'm used to being in. And this project has already been approved by the County Council, and the petition addresses, therefore, the project's conformance with county ordinances and regulations, including the modifications and the exemptions as noted throughout the petition, and particularly on page 50. The third requirement has subparts, the first of which is that the petition is consistent with the policies and criteria established under 205-16. That section requires conformity with the Hawaii State Plan, and the petition details how the project conforms with the plan, specifically in pages 36 through 46. The second subpart requires consistency with the policies and criteria under the CZMA. And as the project is located more than 3 miles from the coast, the main concern there would be stormwater runoff. That's addressed on pages 20 and 34 of the petition. The project was designed to contain all runoff on site to allow for aquifer recharge. The third subpart is a little bit of a deeper dive. Under that, the Commission considers 6 factors. The first is to the extent to which the reclassification conforms to the applicable goals, objectives, and policies of the Hawaii State Plan and relates to the applicable priority guidelines of the Hawaii State Plan and the adopted functional plans. Again, those are detailed on pages 36 through 46. The project, as explained in those pages, conforms to those goals, policies, and objectives. The second factor is the extent to which the proposed reclassification conforms to applicable district standards. Here, the petition area conforms to the standards for determining urban districts, and we discussed that on pages 51 through 54 of the petition. The third factor looks at the impact of the reclassification in areas of state concern, which are labeled A through F. Area A is the preservation or maintenance of important natural systems or habitats. And here, Hōkūao will not impact natural habitats, as the site was a former pineapple field and will preserve, as I said, the runoff on site. Area B is the maintenance of valued cultural, historical, or natural resources. And here those were all assessed. And we worked in particular with Shifty to ensure compliance with all state requirements. The project also intends to protect migrating seabirds. The protective measures, as you saw in some of the colloquy with the Office of Planning, will be implemented to prevent invasive species. And finally, as you saw in the colloquy with Office of Planning, and as I also discussed with Commissioner Giovanni, there's the condition with respect to hoary bats. And again, we are entirely receptive to the Commissioner's proposed adjustment of that condition. Area C is the maintenance of other natural resources relevant to Hawaii's economy, including agricultural resources. And here, I think, as you can see in the record, and you've heard from both our testimony and the public testimony, there will be a benefit to Hawaii's economy through the Hōkūao project, and that there remain ample agricultural lands for cultivation on Lanai. And I think you further heard Mr. Matsumoto explain PÖLAMA Lanai's commitment to agriculture on Lanai. Area D is the commitment of state funds and resources. A lot of questions directed to that, appropriately so, but it was confirmed, and I'll confirm again that the project will be completely funded by PÖLAMA Lanai. And we will, as part of that, develop the currently unused well to provide additional capacity for the Lanai city distribution system. Area E is the provision for employment opportunities and economic development. As you see in the record before you, and you heard Dr. Dansel describe, we anticipate that the project will generate more than $52 million in construction wages and an estimated $19.5 million in state taxes and $7 million in county taxes. Area F is the provision for housing opportunities for all income groups, particularly the low, moderate, and gap groups. And you heard both Dr. Dansel and Mr. Matsumoto explain that through Hōkūao and Ivioli, the additional 39 units that PÖLAMA Lanai has retained in the affordable pool, this project will provide housing for all income levels. The fourth factor in the commission's review doesn't apply because the petition area is not, or has not been designated IAL, important agricultural lands. In compliance with the fifth factor, we've detailed on pages 47 through 51 our conformity to the county general plan. Sixth, the representations and commitments made by PÖLAMA Lanai were discussed. Those are the county modifications. And we had extensive discussion on at least a couple of them, and can confirm again that we accept all of them and accept as well the OP conditions as described in the discussion today, and as well as the balance of the conditions that were not discussed. The remaining decision-making criteria are incremental redistricting and performance time. They're not applicable. That is because the entire project is anticipated to be completed by 2025. And in addition to that representation, which is in the record and was made again today, the county council in its modifications imposed a requirement to complete construction of all workforce housing units within 10 years of receiving the first building permit. And so based on the record that is before you, both the written record and the testimonial record, we believe that we've met that more likely than not standard and demonstrated that this project satisfies the decision-making criteria for a boundary amendment, that the community is behind it, as you heard unanimously today, and that it is a good project, and we ask for your approval. I thank you for your time and the opportunity to close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chip Chase.
Welcome.
Let's move on. There will be an additional chance to ask any questions of the petitioner later in our proceeding. Did the commissioners or any of the parties have anything to ask now? I think we could move on to the county's proceeding presentation.
Thank you, Chair. The county only intends to call Deputy Planning Director Jordan Hart as its witness.
Okay, and doing that right now?
Yes,
he's here.
He's on here as a.
Yeah. Mr. Hart, if you would unmute, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give us the truth?
I do.
Thanks. Please proceed, Mr. Hopper.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Director Hart, could you please summarize the Planning Department's position in this docket?
Thank you. The department and the Lanai Planning Commission provided comment on the petitioner's draft EA for the project, resulting in a final EA, resulting in a finding of no significant impact for the final environmental assessment that was issued by the County of Maui Department of Housing and Human Concerns. The department also provided comment to the Maui County Council on the project, which resulted in the approval of the 201H application by resolution 21-136. Pursuant to the department's position statement filed on October 21st, 2021, based on our review of the information provided by the petitioner, the department finds the proposed reclassification of state land use to state land use urban district is consistent with the standards for determining urban district boundaries as set forth in HRS and the LUC's rules. The reclassification is anticipated to result in the development of critically needed affordable housing for Lanai residents. The Planning Department supports PÖLAMA Lanai's petition for district boundary amendment.
You are muted, Mr. Hopper.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Deputy Director Hart can be made available for questions.
Okay.
I think that's all we have.
Okay. Beating Mr. Chip Chase to efficiency levels. We'll start with Mr. Chip Chase. Any questions for the county?
No, Chair.
Ms. Kato,
No questions, thank you.
commissioners. Mr. Hart, in some of the correspondence included in the petitioner's exhibits included a letter from Ms. McLean to, I believe it was Munekio, but it could have been to another party. And one of the particular questions regarded how units would be allotted and prioritized in relationship to people who are already known to desire housing on the island. Can you just clarify for the record that the county was satisfied with the petitioner's response to those questions?
Chair, we understand that the petitioner would be required to comply with the provisions of Maui County Code Chapter 2.96, which outline the process for selecting and confirming candidates for housing.
So they have requested slight modifications to those procedures, if I recall correctly. I would allow Mr. Chip Chase to confirm that. You're muted.
I would blame Mr. Gooden, but the last time I did, you made an order that I had to be nice to him. So that stands.
And it still stands.
And I will not blame him. That is true, Chair. We did request and receive modifications through the County Council approval process, but subject to those, Mr. Hart is correct. We will follow Chapter 296.
Thank you. Sorry, any further response, Mr. Hart?
No further response.
Okay. Commissioner Ohigashi, followed by Commissioner Giovanni.
Mr. Hart, I'm going to ask you to confirm what Mr. Matsumoto says, that this development infrastructure that is being required of them to put in will assist the county in determining or moving on their 115-acre proposed project.
That's correct, it will.
Could you elaborate a little bit about how will that?
Sure. So the current location of infrastructure is significantly further away from the access that the county would require for development, and it will be brought closer to the required location by the development of this project.
Other question.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Ohigashi. Commissioner Giovanni.
Thank you, Chair. My question to Mr. Hopper regards the hoary bat condition. Would the county be amenable to modification of that condition that is in the record in the event that the hoary bat is delisted from the Endangered Species Act, that the restrictions on construction between September and I believe it's December of each year would be removed?
I can check with Deputy Director Hart. The county generally at these proceedings defers to the state on endangered species matters because they're the proper experts. I would suspect, and Director Hart or Deputy Director Hart could confirm that if the state and the developer are in agreement with that I think it would be acceptable. But normally we would rely on state in order to enforce those laws because that's their area of expertise.
Mr. Hart?
Yeah, we would concur. If it was no longer endangered, it would seem that the condition was not relevant.
Thank you. That's all I'm looking for is your concurrence. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioners, anything further for the county? I don't assume you have any redirect, Mr. Hopper.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Ms. Kato, Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
We have Rani Funakoshi, Land Use Division Administrator, here to present the position of OPSD.
Okay. Mr. Funakoshi, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Okay, please summarize the position and testimony of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development in this docket.
Okay, thank you and good afternoon, Commissioners. The Office of Planning and Sustainable Development supports and recommends approval of the reclassification subject to some additional conditions. I would first like to express our commendation to PÖLAMA Lanai for proceeding with this very much needed affordable housing project on Lanai. We are especially pleased to see that it will provide for affordable housing in perpetuity for 76 units, as well as an additional 39 units to load for rent to low and low income households. So this has been a very elusive goal in projects. And so we're very pleased and would like to express our appreciation to PÖLAMA Lanai for taking this route. The other area that I would like to highlight is relative to sustainability. So in both, they have provided for very, very good sustainability principle measures. First, I would like to note the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And they are basically providing a net zero energy development, which promotes energy efficiency and clean and renewable energy production that includes storage of energy, along with efficient water fixtures, low impact development measures. And then they're also committing to basically try to achieve a carbon neutral status. And I think this is basically unprecedented as far as any large development that I'm aware of. So the very strong sustainability practices and sustainability principles are very much lauded and commendable. The Council for Petitioner has gone through the reasons for how it meets the Land Use Commission's decision-making criteria. So I won't go over that, but we have assessed the project and consulted with various state agencies on it. And we concur that it does not conflict with HRS Chapter 205 and generally meets the Commission's decision-making criteria. And so we recommend approval of the petition subject to the petitioner's commitment to avoid, minimize, or mitigate project impacts as represented herein and in this proceeding. And in the imposition of additional conditions, which we have outlined in our OPSD testimony. So we had 1 to 8 conditions, and we've also supplemented that as well as added in 9th relative to preservation of the mature and historic cook pine trees, mark of the community gardens, as recommended by the cultural impact assessment. So on that basis, OPSD again supports and recommends approval of the petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funakoshi. Anything further, Ms. Kato?
Nothing further.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Funakoshi from the petitioner?
One more time. No questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. County.
No questions, Chair.
Commissioners, starting with Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Funakoshi, my questions are really just related to item number 4, which was Exhibit B, the modifications, and specifically the section that says, and I quote, developer must reserve 10 residential workforce housing units for teachers in grades pre-K through 12 residing on Lanai. I'm just going to ask you some questions just to fill out the record here. You know, at the Office of Planning, are you is your overall goal in looking at planning issues to see about how we can move our state to make it a better place for its residents? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, absolutely.
You folks are the holistic people who are supposed to look at everything, correct?
We have limitations, but we try to do our best.
Yeah, okay. You know, and I guess those of us who are sent away to mainland seminars, we're always looking at building concrete infrastructures. But let me ask you this question related to Exhibit 4. You know, one of the great historians of Hawaiian history, Lawrence Fuchs, FUCHS, in his landmark book, Hawaii Pono, had this chapter called Seeds of Democracy, where his whole point of that chapter was that the classroom teachers are the ones that moved Hawaii from the 20s and 30s of an oligarchical type of society into a place where democracy can flourish. So would you agree that one of the things, the goals a state needs to have and promote is basically support of the classroom teachers?
Yes, no, clearly education is, is a means to, a lot of things. And so definitely that needs to be promoted.
Yeah, we might have some real serious questions about what people at a district or superintendent's office might be doing in the Department of Education, but there is pretty good consensus. And you heard the testimony of the former principal of Lanai High and Elementary. There's a pretty good consensus that classroom teaching is really important, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, if we have to prioritize infrastructure or where we're going to put our money, it's classroom teaching is a good place, or the classroom, the schools where I guess the Department of Education's customer service people, the teachers, the principals, the custodians, where they meet the customer, the students and their families. That's where we should really try to put our efforts with whatever resources we can muster. You agree that's a good planning objective?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and this reservation of workforce housing units for teachers, given the former principal's testimony about the difficulty of recruiting teachers, do you think that this provision implements an important state goal?
Well, I would say that it's not only teachers, but certainly teachers are very important.
Okay, because maybe in the end, in these fast changing economies and societies and industries, maybe the best we can do for the next generation and the coming generations is trying to give them a good education and good teachers to provide that education. Fair statement?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Okuda. Commissioner Giovanni.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm back on my hoary bat horse. Can I ask the county, either Mr. Hopper or your representative, would you be amenable to a modification of the condition regarding the hoary bat?
You mean the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development rather than the county?
I do mean the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Thank you for that correction, Chair. My apologies. So Ms. Kato and Mr. Funakoshi, would you be agreeable to amend the condition regarding the hoary bat, that in the such case that it becomes delisted from the endangered species list, that you would relax or remove the restrictions for construction during the September to December period. My intent is to get this project built as fast as possible.
Yeah, we of course did not have a chance to check with our agency that probably would have the expertise in that area, but it sounds completely logical. And the only thing I would say though is that there's both federal and state endangered species. So, that would need to be kind of qualified that it would need to be delisted from both. So that would be my only qualification to that.
I think we could accommodate that. And I also want to comment on it's more a comment, but since you brought it up, I will expand upon it, having to do with the design of these units in terms of net zero or energy efficiency. It's really gratifying to see a developer take the initiative to incorporate the latest technology for energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy to achieve that energy efficiency in the design of a complex that is to be occupied by renters. This is a challenge that has been not met in many cases. We have the first example on the island of Kauai where affordable housing rental units where the developer has installed solar and storage. And this is another great example. So I feel that this is again, a continuation of an appropriate model for developments of this type in recognition of what we need to do in the context of climate change control. So thank you for recognizing that, Mr. Funakoshi. That's very important. Appreciate it.
Yes, that's very gracious and highly commendable of PÖLAMA Lanai.
No further comments or questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioners? I just want to briefly then follow up on the Opeapea or Horibat concerns with Mr. Funakoshi. If I understand correctly, Mr. Funakoshi, a couple things. First of all, I'm not sure that what is being proposed is delisting so much as downlisting for the bat. Are you aware of that? So going from endangered to threatened rather than being removed from protection?
Yeah, I'm not aware of the technical term for that.
Okay, one removes protection under the act, one lowers the level. The second is just because we have a state Endangered Species Act in addition to the federal one, which you referenced, delisting at the federal level does not automatically result in delisting at the state level, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so while hearing Commissioner Giovanni's concerns, would the normal, at least likely procedure for removal of this condition be motion to amend?
That would be the typical course of how conditions are modified. So this is kind of a condition to a condition. So that's unusual, but I don't see it as particularly objectionable.
Would it provide you the opportunity to consult with the Division of Forestry and Wildlife?
We would probably want to do that in the interim between, say, presumed approval here and preparation of the decision in order.
Okay. I have nothing further. Commissioners, anything further? Commissioner Giovanni, since I was following up on your point, did you have anything further that you want to say?
Thank you, Chair. I think you know my intent. My intent is not to unnecessarily delay the construction of this project, presuming it's approved. And you are correct that there's a difference between delisting and downlisting, or whatever that appropriate term might be. And I'm comfortable that if the state OPSD can agree to language and the petitioner could agree to language to relax that requirement based on the science and whatever happens by the regulators, state and federal level, then I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Okay, petitioner, Mr. Chipchase, do you have any rebuttal or final comments that you wish to make at this time?
My only final comment would be on that same line, and certainly work with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to see if we can agree on a condition that incorporates Commissioner Giovanni's concerns, which we share. We want this built as soon as possible while still respecting the regulations and the protection of the hoary bat. With that, commissioners, I have nothing further. I very much appreciate your time and look forward to the discussion.
Okay. Commissioners, any last questions before we move into close of evidentiary portion and move on to deliberation? Seeing none, given that the parties, and I really appreciate, have efficiently presented their cases on the matter. Given that those are completed, I declare the evidentiary portion of this proceeding now completed. Pursuant to HAR 15-1597K2, the petitioner has provided a proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision in order for this docket and served it upon the parties in the commission. The commission's standard conditions were included in the proposed order, and if the parties desire to stipulate any portion or all of the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision order, they were encouraged to do so. OP and intervener provided their the OP provided their own proposed conditions, and those have been in our record today agreed to. I now want to move on directly to formal deliberation. So I will note for the parties and the public that during the commission's deliberations, I will not entertain any additional input from the parties unless those individuals or entities are specifically called to do so by me as the chair. If called upon, any comments need to be restricted to responding solely to the question at hand. The commission heard the merits of this petition and the conclusion of the parties' closing arguments today. Commissioners, let me confirm with each of you that you have reviewed the record and read transcripts. There's been no other meetings, but read any transcripts for any meeting you've missed and are prepared to deliberate on the subject docket. After I call your name, please signify with either an aye or a nay that you're prepared to deliberate on this matter. Commissioner Cabral.
Aye.
Commissioner Chang.
Aye.
Commissioner Giovanni.
Aye.
Commissioner Ohigashi.
Aye.
Commissioner Okuda.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
The chair is also prepared to deliberate on this matter. Commissioners, I will entertain a motion that the LUC accepts or does not accept PÖLAMA Lanai's petition for district boundary amendment. The motion should state the reasons for acceptance or non-acceptance of the petition and any additional conditions that will apply, any conditions and any additional conditions that will apply. What is your pleasure, commissioners? I recognize Commissioner from Maui, Lee Ohigashi.
Yes, because of the fact that we have transcript being created as we watch, I decided to have it written out so that it's clear. I move that the commission approve the petition subject to the original 23 conditions identified in petitioner's proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, decision and order, and also to include the 8 conditions proposed by the Office Planning and Sustainable Development. I believe there was referred to as 9 condition, the 9th condition. So I'm not sure if there's 8 or 9. But in those conditions that have been proposed by Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Also, I'd like the staff to be authorized to make minor non-substantive editorial changes and for the chair to be able to sign the order on behalf of the commission.
There's a motion. Commissioner Cabral.
I would be very honored to second that motion and support my fellow Commissioner Ohigashi and County of Maui and the island of Lanai and the good, wonderful thoughts about housing for our citizens. Thank you.
Commissioner Ohigashi, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, I made this motion because I believe that it is what the obvious is that project addresses a critical need on the island of Lanai. Critical need in the county of Maui, critical need in the state of Hawaii. I also want to comment that the witnesses, Ms. Danso and Mr. Matsumoto, were incredibly credible. Their answers assured me that the project is intended for the youth, for the residents of Lanai, as well as the workers of Lanai. The affordable and the market rentals will increase inventory on that island. Secondary effect is that they appear to have been able to assist the county of Maui in further development of housing future by bringing the necessary infrastructure closer to that area. On that basis, I think that this project will have a definite effect, increasing the availability of housing, and I'm happy to make this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you. Does Commissioner Cabral have further comments in support of her second?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm really thrilled to see that when that private citizens and private business and common sense can once in a while have something to say about it. And I certainly am appreciative that government is not doing too much to get in the way of success for our community. Thank you.
Commissioners, we are in deliberation. We have a motion for approval before us. Commissioner Okuda, followed by Commissioner Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will also support Maui Commissioner Ohigashi's motion. I believe that the petitioner, with a very, very competent presentation, has met the burden of proof with witnesses, Dr. Danso, Mr. Matsumoto, who are extremely credible. And you can tell that from listening and observing their demeanor. Let me just say the thing that really hooked me in on this. And I assure you, I've kept an open mind until the evidence has come in. As I disclosed at the beginning, I've been involved with HSTA Executive Director Wilbur Hulk regarding teacher housing and classroom teacher initiatives. I do this more than community service because Wilbert and I go back to third grade at Kainalu Elementary School, and true story, he kept people from taking my lunch money. So it's neat to try to do something for going forward. But frankly speaking, until I saw the petitioner's petition, I really thought these efforts are just, chasing windmills. It's never going to happen. I do it because Wilbert's my friend. And sometimes, you just got to do crazy stuff with your friends. So this is more than being pleasantly surprised by what PÖLAMA Lanai is proposing here. I believe it sends a very strong statement to classroom teachers that they are important and that education and public education is important. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised because Kurt Matsumoto is a Lanai boy, but whether we're surprised or not, I think they should all be complimented for this petition and the good work they've done in presenting it. So I will be voting in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Okuda. Commissioner Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am going to be voting in favor of this motion. I recognize that this is a very unique circumstance situation. You have a single private landowner who owns 90% of the island. You've got, so they're in a very good position. And I hope this is not an aberration. I really do hope that this becomes, as many of the other commissioners have recognized, a model. But what I do acknowledge here is that this project, in my mind, demonstrates when you have a receptive landowner, because I suspect that Mr. Ellison is not that easy, that it did take some coaching, but it demonstrates when you have a receptive landowner and you have a CEO. I'm going to get a little emotional because we don't always have this, but you have a CEO who has a connection to this place, who brings sensitivity to with vision and policies that honors and respects the community and the place. And it is that kind of synergy that I think this community has desired for a very long time. But it's not just Lanai. It is our state as a whole looking for that kind of a vision, that kind of willingness to take some risk. So I greatly appreciate all of the efforts that that has been put into this project. You've put together a good team. I will remember 3-5 years ago sitting on Lanai, where we did not have this kind of reception. And so it is with great pleasure to be here today and to see a project come forward like this and to be able to support it. So thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chang. Commissioner Giovanni.
Thank you, Chair. I, with pleasure, will support this motion by Commissioner Ohigashi. You know, there's a continuous parade of quote unquote affordable housing projects that come before this commission. And we seem to be in search for those that are of the right type, the right design, the right size, and really meet the community demand and the community need. And rarely do they measure up. But this one does. It's the right project at the right time. It may be a little bit late even, but it's going forward. And I tip my hat to Mr. Ellison, to Mr. Matsumoto, to my friend Dr. Dansel. Thank you for bringing it forward, and please bring it to completion as soon as possible. I support the motion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioners, Commissioner Wong.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with all my other commissioners, but one of the issues that comes to mind is that the median income that they're looking at will help people who cannot pay for regular housing. And that's what's needed, especially for people who live on Lanai, we've all been there and the cost of living is crazy. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of them that's involved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further deliberation, commissioners? I'm going to also vote in favor of the motion. With saying that, I'm just going to, and I actually join in the sort of like overall, this is the right project at the right time. I will just share a couple small misgivings I have, even though I am fully voting yes. One misgiving is, and this is not PÖLAMA Lanai's fault, but we have this disconnect between what our communities want, which is homes for our kids, and what we're actually allowed to do. It's highly problematic to me. And I think it's one of the things that can lead to a loss of faith in government when people say, hey, I'm going to support this project. I want to see this come out of it. And that's not actually what can be delivered. I don't know the solutions to it. One of the solutions, and this is just speaking on my personal life, part of what allowed me to come to remain in Hawaii was my parents were homeowners. And so when, their home was sold, that gave me a chance to, and the proceeds shared with my siblings, I'm able to own a home here. A rental project doesn't provide that kind of equity building within families, though I realize the many merits of having a rental project as part of the overall housing mix. The second thing I'll share, and I did not want to share this during deliberation because I didn't want to give the impression that it was affecting my deliberations. But a number of years ago, when I was working with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, and we were starting our water policy plan development efforts, we held community meetings on every island, including on Lanai. And I simply gave a presentation, the same presentation I gave to every other Hawaiian community, 10 other meetings. And one of the things was on the role of designation of a water management area and how the Water Commission protects Hawaiian rights. And later that evening, I was pulled aside by a former employee of the company, hit on the side of the shoulder and said, hey, what are you doing? Are you some kind of troublemaker? We don't have those issues on the island. Why are you causing this trouble? And so I don't have as easy a time accepting that after that experience, that things might be tough for some people on the island, despite the incredible culture that I don't question that Mr. Matsumoto and Mr. Ellison have tried to build on the island. There's at least historically, perhaps before the involvement, a pattern of people not feeling fully free. So, but I'm very satisfied by the commitments made and the stated commitments to respect the law around fair housing that exists. And of course, those will be applied on this island as they are everywhere else. Thanks for letting me share those thoughts. It is still a very enthusiastic yes. With that, if there's nothing further, Mr. Ordenker, would you please poll the commission?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion is to grant the petition subject to the original 23 conditions in the petitioner's proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law, and the conditions proposed by OPSD, and to allow minor substantive changes to be made by staff, and the chair be authorized to sign the decision. Commissioner Ohigashi.
Aye.
Commissioner Cabral.
Aye.
Commissioner Axon is absent. Commissioner Chang.
Aye.
Commissioner Giovanni.
Aye.
Commissioner Hōkūao.
Yes.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Chair Schroeder.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion passes with 7 affirmative votes.
Thanks and congratulations, Mr. Chip Chase, and to the county and to the parties for efficiently presenting your case. We very much appreciate it. And checking one last time, is there any further business, Mr. Ordenker?
Not that I'm aware of, Chair.
Okay, there being no further business, I adjourn this hearing.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much, Mr. Chip Chase, Mr. Matsumoto.